Hello and welcome to God Tier Fanfiction. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Kid Naruto Was Raised by Uchiha Mom. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Kakashi was forced to sigh. Although he had seen scenes like this before, this was the first time he had ever allowed it to go this far. He said, "Guy." His opponent stepped forward and gave his friend an inexplicable glance. To be fair, as soon as the trio entered the bar, he had prevented the man wearing spandex from entering. However, Kakashi liked his noisy rival because of that. The man's heart was pure. And it was evident when Maida Guy picked up the woman who was lying on the ground, bruised and covered in blood. He overheard Asuma ask one of the patrons, was she picking a fight again? And the patron enthusiastically shared the juicy rumors. After picking a fight she couldn't win, Nanashi Uchiha stumbled to her feet for the 100th time since she was freed from Hazuka Castle. Kakashi sighed when a customer said to Asuma, "Exploded on the two, of course, they took care of the drunkard." What a disgrace. He had intervened more than twice, each time preventing the woman from getting too hurt, dragging her out of the bar, and sending her home with a quick boot to the ass. However, the woman suddenly gained strength and jumped onto the man's leg, biting him viciously as one of the men who had fought her, Izuki or something, if Kakashi recalled correctly, was explaining the situation to Guy. As the woman stood up again, Izuki struck out with his foot, kicking her clean in the face and loudly cracking her nose, sending her crumpling to the floor in a heap. Kakashi made an attempt to intercept, feeling a little ashamed, but the woman was kicked off quickly enough. At last, Guy leapt forward and huddled over the woman. Izuki was blameless, but there were rumors circulating the bar that she had rabies, which some people even made fun of. She was to blame. The woman's prison sentence was reduced by 7 years, and she used the gift to drink and waste her life. What a shame. 10 years ago, she had shown such promise. The 17-year-old had even been watched by Minato. How unfortunate. Izuki's companion yelled, "Just dump her in the alley," as Guy left the bar. What a shame. Nanashi muttered, "You gotta be on my side, Guy," as the man leaned her against the cool stone wall. Her deafening migraine was effectively treated by it. She was having trouble thinking clearly even before that kick made contact. Guy whispered, "This is the 3rd time this week, Nanashi," while he ironed her shirt. She swatted his hands away and tried to smile through her blurry vision, saying, "That's not bad." The man stood and said, "It's still Monday." Nanashi could only scowl resentfully at the disappointment in his voice. He shoved a hand down my pants. Nanashi became enraged when Guy shook his head and said, "So the same excuse as always. Someone always strikes first, so you have to act like a feral cat." She frowned into the ground and said, "No one else will help me." Nanashi. I disagree with Kakashi's words, but maybe this beating will finally knock some sense into you. Fuck you, Guy. Please, Nanashi. Stop being this drunken mess. You made a mistake. You paid your time in prison, so try to better yourself. You don't know a damn thing. Nanashi finally managed to form a coherent sentence as the man was already retreating into the bar. As Izuki and his sidekick passed by, pointing and making fun of her while kicking a few stray pebbles at her bruised body, a laugh echoed off her aching head and she turned to glare. Fucking bastards, they were completely ignorant. Not a thing. Before long, minutes and seconds blended together as Nanashi sat in the dirt, her head pounding, doing nothing but wallowing in her own misery. Her muscles ached as she reached up and pushed chakra into her hands, pressing her palms firmly into her temples. As the healing jutsu began to work, gradually removing the worst of the toxins from her body, a green and blue tint emerged. After a considerable amount of time and effort, she managed to push herself upright and staggered through the streets. At least she could find her way home, even though she was still intoxicated but not nearly as aggressive, and her migraine had diminished to a pounding headache. As long as she couldn't even find a new bar to prowl around, damn it. When he was feeling her up, she was fairly certain that bastard had stolen her wallet. It was only about 30,000 ryo, chump change. Whatever. Tomorrow, she would receive more from the family vault. The idea made Nanashi laugh uncontrollably. The family vault. Was a single individual truly a family? Yes, Sasuke was there, too, but whatever. Stuck-up brat, he didn't give a damn about her. The child had never spoken to her again after she had assured him that she would not assist him in killing Itachi. Newsflash, kid, there were other things in life besides retaliation, such as delicious alcohol. Didn't there exist a nearby sake shop? Yeah, later. She could simply have the bank billed later. The sound of a broken bottle and a child's sharp hiss startled Nanashi out of her reverie. She rubbed her nose and blinked slowly as the image gradually sunk into her consciousness. At the edge of an alleyway, a young blonde was squatting and scratching the back of his head. Was he rubbing it, instead? Ah, someone had thrown. Ha, and he calls himself a ninja. What kind of ninja turns his back on an opponent, huh Izuki? Wasting a bottle of the good stuff like that, what a pair of little shits. Little shits. Hold on, talking about young children, that orange jumpsuit and blonde hair really stood out. Nanashi halted behind the child and squatted behind him, focusing on the back of his head while ignoring the two fools' startled gasp. Oi! Even when intoxicated, the child was unable to outrun Nanashi, who clamped a hand on his shoulder and yanked him back. The boy screamed, Oi! Let me go, and Nanashi immediately felt bad about assisting him. The boy immediately moved to cover his now painful ears when she yelled, Oi! Into his ear, ending his struggle. Good, now stop moving. I can't see the glass with all that bull. Huh, she leaned forward and spread his hair with her free hand, ignoring the incomprehensible grunt. Indeed, the child's skull had multiple tiny shards embedded in it. Such a shot would have rendered most unconscious. She would reluctantly hand it over to Izuki. At least he was carrying an arm. Hold this. Nanashi took a small field kit from one of her many pockets and put it in the bewildered boy's hands after removing her hand from his shoulder. She opened it quickly and took out a pair of tweezers. What are you doing? Helping. Now don't move. Silly child, if you leave glass in for too long, it'll get infected. Huh, the wounds. If you leave the glass in. I just said that. No, you didn't. Tomato tomato, suck it up. Although it didn't seem necessary. The scrapes and cuts were healing themselves very slowly. They would be almost completely recovered by morning. The enigmatic healing factor swiftly stopped the blood as one of the looser shards emerged. Orange and blonde. You won't even feel it in the morning, kid. The children's own chakra got to work, pulling the biggest shards free with two swift tugs. Or was it the chakra of the children? Again, what was his name? As she poked at one of the cuts, the child yelled, Do you have to be so rough? According to the demon container, Naruto Uzumaki, right. Hundreds of people have been killed, including both civilians and Konoha shinobi. A monster. She flipped the child over and looked questioningly into those vivid blue eyes that were full of uncertainty, anxiety, and hope. She gazed into the eyes of her hero, Minato Namikaze, and stood with a righteous rage that was more akin to a drunken stagger due to the alcohol coursing through her veins. Nanashi turned to face Izuki and his pet, the other two people in their small group. Who the hell gave a damn about his name? Oi, you two make it a habit of beating on kids. She walked straight into that. I kicked your ass, didn't I? I am 27 years old. Yeah, that would show him. What would show me? Nanashi sighed and stretched, pushing the child away and swaying in her place while glaring at the two fools. I'm too drunk for this shit. The man laughed and said, You really want to do this again, Uchiha? Her head pounded and she winced at the high-pitched sound. I need a drink. Well, she could get her money back right away and carry on with the party. After she finished stomping these fools, she would drop the child off somewhere. Izuki grinned and took a step forward, cracking his knuckles. I'll make sure you have to use a straw for it. As the second man moved too, she complained, but they're so boring. Straws really limit the amount you can drink at once. Plus, they can really change the experience of a good drink. Plus, it just makes me think of someone sucking. Nanashi almost fell flat on her face as she swayed out of his swing. If that's how they wanted to play it, though, she dropped into a loose stance, her right arm lowered in a loose fist close to her hip and her left arm extended, crossing her chest. Her posture swayed drunkenly. Izuki smiled and struck out with a fist. As his partner moved forward with his hands ready to seize her, Nanashi staggered back, avoiding the attack, and tripped over her feet. But all she did was duck and spin, backhanding the man while grinning as her knuckles knocked out at least 2 teeth. From the shadows, she heard her hero's son murmur, Whoa. She laughed and danced back, grinning. I can't lose here, Nanashi muttered to herself. She had no chance of faltering in front of him. Not a chance. How much time had passed since she had practiced the drunken fist? Particularly inebriated. Nevertheless, she always turned to taijutsu. Using the man's momentum, she shifted, caught the next punch in a loose grip, and swung her own arm down, slamming her elbow into his temple as she pulled. Izuki cursed profusely as she moved into her range as he fell. However, she kicked him in the knee as soon as she saw a hand signal flash. She slurred, "None of that, now." Nanashi grabbed his other hand as she darted hers out to interlock their fingers, tripped him, and pressed their chests together. She smiled. It was similar to waltz dancing. Now, all those dance classes were pointless. Still holding hands, she pushed off and pulled him forward again, giving him a shake with a knee to the stomach but sealing the deal with a headbutt. Nanashi celebrated her lackluster victory as Izuki collapsed to the dirt floor. "That was so cool," she said, grinning at the child and striking a pose while he complimented her. Her gaze swept over the two unconscious men, but she didn't really care. When she saw the bulge in his back pocket, she exclaimed, "Aha!" and took out all of her winnings. Delicious, valuable alcohol money. And a bit more. "Can you show me how to do that?" As Nanashi counted her money and considered which bar to hit next, she said, "To learn, you must become." Or some shit like that. I think. What was the quote? Anyway, become an alcoholic, and you might be able to learn my masterful ways. The fools must have just completed a mission because they have 52,000 ryo. Hee. Normally, she wouldn't have been eligible for a refund. They referred to it as the word of a criminal against two of Konoha's best. However, they most likely wouldn't even make a sound if the child was a witness. Stupid people. Everyone was aware that the elderly fart personally cared for the child. "Hey, what's going on over here? Whoops, it's time to leave." As a Chunin pushed his way through, she was unaware that a crowd was gathering. Exit stage left, kid. Huh, the expression on his face would be priceless. Ever been shunshined before, brat? Naruto didn't say much more before the enigmatic yet cool woman took hold of his arm and the wind whipped past them. "Wait, what's going on?" he asked. He felt awesome, despite the strangeness and the twisting in his stomach. He had no idea how it had happened, but all of a sudden the two were standing atop the Hokage monument, directly in the middle of his hero's spiky hair. As soon as she released her grip, the strange woman next to him stumbled and collapsed to her knees at the edge of the stone. As the woman puked over the edge, Naruto wrinkled his nose and said, "Ew." The woman took a minute to get back up, but before long, she was smiling down at him again and wiping the drool from her face. "Remind me to never shunshin again while that drunk." "Oh, my Kami. So, kid, I didn't really mean to drag you all the way up here." Was just the first place that came to mind. As he dashed to the edge of the head, Naruto smiled and gave the woman a thumbs up. "It's fine," he said. "This is my favorite hiding spot, actually. Only Iruka-sensei can ever find me up here. I love it up here. It was always my go-to as well. It's been a long time since I came here." Really? Yeah, although she was strange, she was at least kind. Even if it's a bit difficult. He was great. Who was? She spoke strangely all the time. Didn't you hear what I said? Minato, do you know the guy whose head we're standing on? He was always my hero, so I used to come up here to think. I would also always save money to use the private training grounds further back. My favorite place to train away from the clan. Minato, the fourth Hokage. Oh, right, I forgot his name, He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, and her eyes narrowed. It was never easy to remember names. What are they teaching in the academy today? Or are you just not the sharpest kunai in the pouch? He was going to be the greatest Hokage. Oi, I am totally the sharpest. It's true. Oh yeah, then what's the second Hokage's name? No one ever talks about him. I mean, who would? He didn't do much, the bastard. Since the woman had him there, Naruto had to acknowledge, how was he supposed to know a dead man's name? The woman was moving her head strangely before he could come up with a name, almost as if he turned around and saw a plaque. And, Hiruzen Sarutobi, came in second on the list. Perfect. However, why did that name sound so familiar? That's Lord Third, idiot. What, he's second, though. Minato-sama's name is on the top, she said, rolling her eyes as she walked over to the plaque and ran a finger down the shortlist. He is the fourth lord. Sarutobi-san is Lord Third. Tobirama, a jerk, came in second. Lastly, our founder, Lord Hashirama Senju, is Lord First. The second Hokage was disliked by everyone. Why is that, really? The woman mumbled something that he couldn't quite understand, but that was all she said. He sucked. And the best one was the fourth. At least that's what Naruto believed. He may not have known the man's name, but he was undoubtedly aware of his exploits. You could say that. He certainly is, in my opinion, but Lord Third is the favorite of most people. This is the reason that since he retook the position after the QB incident, there have been no calls for him to resign. Because Minato-sama was simply too awesome to be number one, he was my second favorite and someone I used to idolize. The elderly man is truly amazing. Naruto winced at her almost angry expression and said, yeah, sure he is. In an attempt to change the subject, he asked, why do you like the fourth? What about him wasn't there to love? Minato was a jonin, and I was 10 when we first met. I believe he was in the running for Hokage right before it was leaked. For starters, he was a dreamboat. He was a genius, though. I just melted when he discussed jutsu and chakra. He had a lot of passion. Do you know that he was dubbed the fastest man in history? Lord Second once held that title, but Minato-sama recreated it using one of the ancient fossils jutsu and then improved it beyond recognition. In one fight, I killed 1,000 of those Iowa bastards. He turned into the yellow flash. What caused the yellow flash? He would only leave a flash of yellow behind whenever he vanished. He became the yellow flash as a result. My favorite thing about him was always that. However, I was a chunin at the time and had just received a promotion at the age of 10. At that time, the war was still going on, but both sides were exhausted, so he let me watch a presentation he had prepared about chakra's effectiveness. Like a sponge, I took in the information. Even after I became a jonin 2 years later, I gave his presentation full credit, particularly when he discussed the use of ninjutsu that is based on movement. Until I made my own, the Shunshin was always my favorite. Naruto wished he could meet the man. So, having speed is preferable to having strength. Just because you're fast doesn't mean you can deal damage, she said. You still need a balance. To pull it off, you need both strength and intelligence. Most of the time, you will lose if your opponent can outsmart you. The shinobi who can outmaneuver their opponents are the most intelligent. Take a look at the Aburame or Nara clans. In the village, those two have had the fewest fatalities. The majority of them are geniuses, so it's not just their clan's skills. A healthy majority, but not all of them. Well, I'm also fairly intelligent. Naruto bragged. Oh, I see, yes, then heads up. Huh. Naruto looked up, wondering what was going on, only for his leg to be yanked out from under him, causing him to fall flat on his butt. Hey. Doesn't seem very bright to me. Look up, you said. Laughing jinglingly, the inebriated man covered her mouth and nose with her shirt collar and put a hand over her eye, saying, always look underneath the underneath. Huh, it just means always prepare for the unexpected, the woman said, pulling her shirt back down as she leaned forward and extended a hand for him to take. It's what Hitaki always says. Although not nearly as much, Minato-sama used to tell people constantly as well. I believe that dog turned it into a religion. Canine. Nothing, kid. Naruto's stomach rumbled loudly and a flush appeared on his face as he reached for her hand. Hungry. Hey, maybe. His blush intensified as she swiftly pulled him up and gave him a shoulder pat. Let's go see if we can find a good bar that's open, she said. Oh, I'm aware of one that has delicious food. Hold on. Oh, how about? No, they banned me last week. I believe I've been banned from that place. Damn. How about some ramen? Naruto enthusiastically jumped in. Ramen. Yes, I can add some salt to the sake. However, I can't think of any ramen bars right now. What about Ichiraku's? Are they the greatest? You say it's Ichiraku's. It has a familiar sound. Yes, I do recall this location. Years ago, Minato brought me here. Well, 2 people and myself. It was a present for making it back from a mission unscathed. He was a wonderful man. Lady Uchiha. Peeking around the woman's legs, Naruto noticed old man Tsuki and Ayame behind the counter, though the old man didn't appear to be happy based on his expression. Yo, Nanashi waved as she glanced around the tiny store. Naruto scowled at the lie. I'm sorry, my lady, but we do not serve alcohol here. He was certain that the man always offered Iruka and old man Hokage some, and that other patrons consistently left their small saucers behind. Naruto. Ayame inquired curiously. Hi, Ayame ni. Naruto jumped up on his favorite chair and said, hello, my new friend. As Naruto gestured for the elderly man to approach, the brunette's gaze strayed over his favorite store, Nanashi Uchiha. Though it seems you already knew that. Nice place, small, quaint, she said. I'll have 2 bowls. Naruto smiled and said, miso. She'll experience the same thing. Tsuki started to say, Naruto, but stopped when Nanashi flung a pile of Ryo in front of him. As his new friend slid into the seat to his right, Naruto grinned broadly and said, let's see if you're as good as I remember. It's the greatest. I recall. Kushina-san used to rant and rave about the place, I'm pretty sure. You could hear it halfway across the village when she started. Who is that? Kushina. Maybe it was another Hokage candidate or something, he inquired, but Nanashi turned to him with her own perplexity rather than responding right away. You don't know who? She bit her lip after an odd expression crossed her face. All right, I'm sorry. Yes, Kushina was my self-described rival. I couldn't compete with her in a fight, but we had a disagreement about something else. I should have realized that I would never win that prize. Of course, I guess it was all in my head when I said that we fought. Kushina was too kind of a person to think of me as a real competitor. Don't worry about it, child. In fact, she went by with Lord Minato. I've been told that when the fox attacked, she managed to restrain the creature. Did she hold it down? Yeah, she was an S rank, for a reason, Naruto said, leaning forward with excitement. The 4th was able to kill the beast. Unfortunately, it hurt her a lot. Let's stop discussing depressing topics, though, shall we? In case the elderly man here refused to serve me, I grabbed my own alcohol. So, kid, let's continue this celebration. May I give it a shot? No. Naruto let out a loud laugh as Tsuki and Ayame suddenly surrounded the two, clearly listening in on them. As if I could get past her. Unaware that Nanashi was carefully putting away the second saucer she had concealed in her hand, the boy let out a roar of laughter at their red faces. Indeed, what sort of animal do you all believe I am? Nanashi cleared her throat and poured herself a small drink. Naruto was intrigued by the beverage, but he was also concerned about the woman's excessive drinking because he knew that most people who yelled at him or were irritated by him always smelled of the burning liquid. You know, Iruka-sensei always says that stuff is bad for you. Well, Iruka-sensei is clueless about how to survive, isn't he? Kid, I had no idea you had your own teacher either. Lord Third must have a strong interest in your development. He teaches at my academy. He's a really cool guy sometimes, when he isn't interfering with my antics. Hey, kid, Naruto filed that same strange expression from her face away for later, placing a bowl of ramen beneath his nose for the time being. Speaking of tricks, how about you leave my house by yourself since I'm paying for your dinner? To get the walls cleaned, I had to get my little cousin to apply for a D-rank job. You know, orange paint and glitter don't work well without red and white. As Ayame handed her a bowl, the woman turned slowly, and Naruto eventually saw the symbol on her back, a red and white fan, though it wasn't the same as his. Are you Sasuke Tem's relative? He has that same fan on his clothes, Naruto remarked in between slurps of his broth. Even though yours has that scythe and string. Oh, does it? I didn't realize I had thrown this one on the other day, she said, straining to get a better look while tugging at the collar of her shirt. How long had she been wearing this shirt? The other day. However, it's true that Sasuke is my cousin. Whatever that means, our fathers were brothers. But he's exactly like his dad. A haughty toe rag. He is. Finally having someone else to discuss the boy with, Naruto smiled. He's always so broody and thinks he's better than me. Now, really, I don't get to spend a lot of time with the child. We have completely different sleep schedules. But every time I see him for the first time in a week, he's loud and annoying. But I suppose that's just children. That same look went by. Do you know how I can defeat him? Tomorrow is our sparring match, and I'm positive I'll see his name drawn once more. They're the best in taijutsu, so it's always him or Kiba. I'm so unlucky, man. Not sure about the Kiba kid, but taijutsu is my speciality, so I guess I could give some pointers for Sasuke. Really? Tell you what, promise to leave my compound out of your pranking sprees, and I'll give you one that'll at least get you a point tomorrow. Really, Naruto could always get at least 1 point on Sasuke out of the 3, but if he could get that second one then, for that trick and the free ramen he could give up pranks around her house. Deal. Okay, then, kid, this would for at least 1 point, Nanashi said, setting aside her saucer and taking a long swig from her sake bottle before grabbing 2 clean pairs of chopsticks from the counter. You guys are probably aiming for knockdowns rather than knockouts or blood. Yeah, Ring outs and knockdowns. Any heavy blood or totally knocking out your opponent resulted in penalties. Alright, then, therefore, Sasuke most likely shares traits with his father and older brother. This indicates that he is employing the beginner or intermediate interceptor fist, which significantly favors the right side. On the right side, it leaves a gap. I doubt Sasuke was taught this, but the majority of Uchiha are trained to fill that gap early on. Why not? So, as a word of warning, keep this in your back pocket. Alright, if you use it too much or too frequently, he'll realize it and switch tactics, she said, merely raising an eyebrow at him before continuing, breaking apart the chopsticks and using them like little legs. You have at least 2 more years to use this covert weapon, and I'll make sure to show him after he graduates. Anyway, wait until he is certain of his own victory while you are fighting. When they believe they are going to win, everyone lets their guard down. Okay, then back yourself into a corner and perhaps set up a tie if he beats you the first or second time. Right now. Nanashi demonstrated the tip by moving the chopsticks. Once he's cornered you, advance, take a step to your right and his left, try to get under his guard, and place your leg behind his. Kick out, twist, and put your leg around his. After a 3-day binge, he will fall more heavily than I would absolutely hold off on trying this until he is certain of winning. He will take your second fight seriously and most likely beat your ass decisively if you can score a point first using a different strategy. During your third, he will become conceited and omit some. The same was true of his father. That's how, at 16, I defeated Fugaku. I was severely beaten for that one, but anyhow, take a step to the right, wrap your leg, turn left, and kick out. Easy, isn't it? Yes, when you get home, kid, just work on your footwork. Additionally, keep in mind to only use it infrequently. I understand. In all honesty, aside from the bottle incident, today was looking promising. Naruto stored the information away, eager to finally get one up on his rival. With a fresh bottle sloshing in her hand, Nanashi staggered into her house and proceeded to drink from it while fumbling for a light switch, not caring about the mess or spill she had made. She would clean it up later or simply let it dry, who gives a shit. Her feet led her to the kitchen, where she collapsed into a chair and glared at the now empty sake bottle in her hand. She was thirsty. No, she was hungry. She narrowed her eyes at the clock and saw the time, 2:07 a.m. She needed grease. After getting up and shuffling to the refrigerator, she pulled out bacon and sausage, deciding on some eggs with cheese as well. Sasuke would be getting up soon for the academy, but if that blonde kid was going to kick her little cousin's ass, she might as well feed him as an apology. Now then, where's that salt and pepper? Nanashi muttered as he looked around. Sasuke found himself in a mess when he entered his kitchen to get breakfast. His original plan was to grab a drink, train for an hour, and then go to the academy, but what is she doing? He looked around at the food strewn all over the kitchen and grimaced at the mess he would have to clean up. Damned woman. His last surviving relative was lying on her back on the kitchen table, a bottle of sake clasped in one hand, spilling onto the floor. Briefly, Sasuke considered leaving the woman to her fate of an aching back and horrible hangover, but he caved and slowly struggled to help the woman off the table, practically dragging the woman to her room, and forcing a glass of water past her lips. It cut into his training time, but with the taijutsu spars today, he could at least get that training later. After unceremoniously leaving the woman tangled in her blankets, he moved back to his kitchen, throwing all the empty pans into the dishwasher and starting a load. He put the ingredients back in the fridge, but that was when he noticed a box with his name crudely drawn onto a note. With a frown, he opened the box and noticed the ungodly amount of bacon, sausage, and eggs haphazardly thrown into it. It was almost nice of the crazed woman. But the eggs looked weird. They were oddly brown and shimmering, almost crystallized, as if she had added the salt after the fact. He tried them, and promptly spat the egg clump out into the trash can. Desperately he looked around the kitchen once more, and sitting beside the black pepper was the offender. Is it impossible for you to read when intoxicated? He raged into the hallway. He replaced the cap on the sugar, and sat it back in the cupboard above, angrily tossing the rest of the eggs into the trash can. He almost threw away the entirety of the lunch box until he noticed the red jewels that had been hidden under the container of eggs. As he stared at the small grape tomatoes, he couldn't help but whisper, "Why do you make it so hard?" As he entered the nearly empty classroom, Naruto realized he was early for once. Only Hinata from the shinobi clans was seated in the center, reading a book, while a few of his fellow civilian students were assiduously studying or playing in the back. "Good morning, everyone," he waved cheerfully at the ones in the back, ignoring their angry gazes. "Morning, Hinata." The girl looked away, ignoring him, and he tried not to show his hurt feelings as she stammered something out to him, but that was okay, he was used to it now. He would just need to pull the biggest prank yet, and then everyone would be staring at him, though beating Sasuke would be a great place to start. He worked in his notebook the rest of the morning, trying to come up with his next prank while avoiding falling asleep, and eventually he passed out of his notes without paying attention to Iruka's endless rambling about some old clan or whatever it was. "Sasuke, you're running late." Naruto was startled awake by Iruka's abrupt shout. He desperately tried to appear busy, but a moment later he realized it wasn't him who was being yelled at. As their teacher's head returned to its normal size, Sasuke's was bowed, saying, "I apologize, Iruka-sensei. I had to assist my cousin and lost track of time." He wondered what the two of them had done. "Cousin, was that Nanashi?" "It's okay, Sasuke. I won't be detaining you for the first time in a long time, but as punishment, you can. You must spend the day seated next to Naruto." They were rivals, so naturally they didn't get along. Naruto blinked and tried to understand how that was a punishment for Sasuke. Naruto was amazing. Anyone would be lucky to. Who was he kidding? "Move over, Dobi." Naruto hadn't even heard the duck butt approach him, but his rival's stealth was incredible, not nearly as good as his own, of course. "Maybe don't be late the next time, Tem, I arrived first." Naruto responded with a shout. "Slow down." As he employed his trademark big head jutsu, Iruka's voice was deafening. As he collapsed next to Naruto, Sasuke muttered angrily, "I want the window seat." Naruto, who enjoyed the window seats as much as the brunette, stuck his tongue out at the irate boy and said, "Too bad." The Uchiha growled, "Dobi. Tem." He knew what he was capable of. "I'll tell you what, Sasuke. I'll give up the window seat forever if you can defeat me in a spar today." "Dobi, it's just a punishment for today. In addition, I'm never late except for this. Furthermore, the teachers create lots for us. Therefore, we might not even be paired. You can have the window seat when we come back in for the second half of class." He had a gut feeling that they would fight today, and it was always correct. Sounds like something a chicken would say. Sasuke gritted his teeth in response to the blonde's demands, but he extended his hand, and Naruto grinned as he took it and shook it, sealing the deal. Nanashi had been correct. The second the first match had begun, Naruto had blitzed Sasuke, immediately gaining a point against the older boy after pushing him out of the ring. The second the next round had begun, however, Naruto was seeing stars. The boy had been furious, but now, as they traded blows in their third match, he could see the Uchiha was falling back into his old habits, and was toying with Naruto. Sadly, it was working. Naruto was just no match for Sasuke's taijutsu. It wasn't fair that he had a fancy clan technique while Naruto was stuck with the beginner's academy style. It sucked, especially with how open the style felt. Still, the entire fight, Naruto kept his eye on Sasuke's side. And finally, just as the time was running out on a draw, Sasuke leaned onto his left side. With a grin, Naruto stepped forward, throwing a palm towards Sasuke's eyes, grinning as the boy slapped it away as he moved over. A twist, a grab, and a turn caused Naruto to fling Sasuke into the air, and right over the ring's line. Nobody applauded. Kiba did chuckle, though. Then all of the fangirls yelled at once, Sakura and Ino matching each other in intensity, but Naruto only cared that he had won. At last. Winner. Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka paused, gazing at him in disbelief. He had defeated his opponent, and the window seat was just a bonus. Naruto jumped and screamed as he threw his arms into the air. And he fell. As Ichiraku related the tale to the two elderly men in his life, Naruto sat at his house. Hiruzen Sarutobi grinned down at his surrogate grandson and said, "I'm so happy for you, Naruto. It's amazing that could spot a weakness that glaring. If only the boy could mature more quickly and fulfill his vow to rid him of this damned hate." "You're right. Additionally, I intend to heed her advice and only use it occasionally. In this manner, after we graduate, Nan-chan will show Sasuke Tem, preventing him from fixing it. It's fortunate that she is planning so far in advance." It was interesting that the drunkard could even think past the next night of binge drinking. Naturally, since he intended to have Kakashi train the boy, the hole would be fixed once he graduated, no matter what. A glaring hole like that can get someone very injured, if not outright killed. Yes, she is really awesome. Oh, that reminds me that I must eventually find her. Track her down. Do you possess anything of hers? If so, my boy, I could give it back to you. No, I was just curious if she had any additional general advice. Knowing that one hole won't help me defeat Sasuke again, even though I may have defeated him once. Moreover, Kiba is incompatible with it, and as it is, I can only defeat Choji half the time. Therefore, any advice she could provide would be greatly appreciated. Well, Naruto, Hiruzen was unsure of what to do next. He didn't want the poor boy to follow in the footsteps of such a criminal, not to mention the alcoholism. Hell, the woman would still be in prison for another 7 years if the elders and clan leaders hadn't voted to release her early in order to get the Uchiha clan back on its feet once more, but she just sat drinking every day, wallowing in self-pity. Lord Second had always told him the clan was nothing but self-loathing, and the woman consistently demonstrated this. I believe. The boy was sticking his head back into the stall through the curtains, saying, "Oh, sorry, old man, I didn't hear you. Maybe next time, though, I've got some training to do before the sun's down." Enjoy yours, Ichiraku. You too, old man. Hey Ayame. The boy had vanished. Fantastic. Chuki. Will you run to Hiyashi's for me, Ayame? Our supply of pork is running low. Hiruzen stared at his old friend, waiting patiently for him to say something, while the girl looked between the two men before nodding and leaving the back. Lord Third, it is exactly as he stated. The boy entered last night, followed by an inebriated Nanashi. In order to prevent her from causing any damage to the property, I had intended to throw her out right away. But, Naruto introduced her as a friend and then ordered food for the two of them, the ramen chef sighed, leaning against the counter. I couldn't turn her down because she showed that she could pay by pulling out the cash. Additionally, I didn't want to offend Naruto. If he has latched onto the woman as a friend, it will be hard to separate them. Although Chuki remained silent, Hiruzen could tell by the expression on his face that he wanted to talk. Go on, my friend, tell me your thoughts. There aren't many friends for Naruto. Maybe it's better to leave them alone. If only it were that easy. According to what the boy said, Nanashi Uchiha was not just a criminal or an alcoholic idiot. She was someone who had worshipped the ground Minato had walked upon, basing her entire fighting style on the fourth. There was no doubt in his mind that Nanashi had recognized Naruto as the man's son right away. She was cunning and dangerous, a jonin at 14, and he had no idea what the woman's plans were for Naruto. If he had to threaten the boy, he would make sure her claws were sunken. I will take it into consideration. As the third Hokage, Nanashi Uchiha would not permit his sinister schemes to succeed. Nanashi hung out of her front door and slurred, "Go away, brat." Nanashi-sensei, hurry up. She frowned at the word that was attached. Teach me, please. No, he blocked her attempt to close the door on him by sticking his head in the way. How strong is that skull? Please, kindly, kindly. He was forcing the door open by overwhelming her. Why me? Desperate to keep the crazy boy out, she yelled. Breathing deeply, Naruto managed to squeeze through and fell to the ground, saying, because. A minute later, Nanashi sighed and hung her drink at her hip after corking it. You're going to do that again, brat. You're fantastic. The early graduation exam is in 4 months, the child said, getting back up on his feet and beaming broadly at her. And the only person I've met who is willing to teach me is you. So hurry up, be my instructor. What do I stand to gain from it? Because I'm going to be Hokage, the boy said, posing and giving her the thumbs up. It's true, you'll be able to boast to everyone about. Hard pass. Leave, she deadpanned. Hurry up, would you please? She kicked him out as she opened her door and prepared to close it again. Hold on, he sounded almost desperate. Kid, I'm really not. What if we spar? What would happen is that she would kick his ass all over the village streets. You serious, kid? Hurry up, you must enroll me as a student if I make an impression on you. Pulling the door back open, Nanashi sighed deeply and said, no offense, kid, but you really shouldn't do this. Why not? Are you afraid? Fine, but I'm warning you now, if you get injured, I won't be held responsible. That was the final straw. She was going to break a leg or two, or at the very least bruise his ego. As Nanashi staggered out, Naruto was already stretching several feet away from the house. He almost seemed eager, and she was going to hate beating that out of him. He would just have to understand that she had no right to teach anyone. No right. She put down her sake bottle in case something went wrong and stood in front of him. Have you said anything? Naruto shouted. Prepare yourself. We go on 3. Nanashi didn't bother stretching. She merely sagged where she stood and flicked a finger at the boy. On 3. Hold on. 3. To the boy's dismay, she moved forward and startled him by kicking a cloud of dirt in his face. Come on, start moving. Why is this a big idea? This would be a good lesson for the boy, her first and only one, she said, ignoring his words. Fights didn't start with a count, they started with the boldest fighter. She recalled using a fire jutsu to beat a squad of genin to the punch during the war as they attempted to pull out their kunai. It ended the fight immediately, but Naruto jumped forward, frustration or rage burning in his face, his movements sloppy and out of place, barely adhering to the academy style she had learned so long ago, and she let him catch up to her, but not a single blow landed, though an unexpected kick almost hit her sluggish form. It was a hot mess. When Nanashi finally went on the attack, she raised her knee and struck his fist squarely as his face contorted in agony. She then stomped down, catching his toes and making him hop back, but she persisted. Finally, she leaned forward on her left leg and delivered a punch, striking his palm as he desperately went on the defensive. However, he did something unexpected all of a sudden. His leg wrapped around hers, and he pulled her to the ground, or at least he tried. Her joints popped, and she twisted, grabbing the back of his shirt and pulling him under her. She twisted her leg free, yanked his arm behind his back, pinning it with her knee, slammed him into the ground, grabbed the boy's other arm, pinning it to the dirt, and yawned. Interesting. He grabbed her arm and stepped to her left. Stuttering something she couldn't quite make out, Naruto sat with her face in the dirt. I'll say, you've got guts, brat, but it's pretty stupid to use a move on the person who taught it to you. At last, Naruto managed to lift his face from the ground and yelled, but you were open. Nanashi laughed to herself and refused to let the boy go, saying, I'm never open, kid. Find someone else to teach you, kid. I'm not the right person for you. When she finally got up, she let the boy stand and lick his wounds before stumbling over to her sake bottle and blowing on the top to remove any dust. Please. She was about to raise the bottle to her lips when she heard Naruto's voice. When Nanashi saw the boy kneeling with his head down, she turned, raising an eyebrow and saying, Kid, just stop. Please teach me, kid. I've never learned anything from anyone before except you. You've got the academy for that. Iruka is always too busy to teach me. He is too preoccupied with the academy itself. The other teachers do not want to interact with me. The boy kept bowing before her, but she couldn't tell if he was crying or trembling with rage. Ask the third, you have his favor. He's too busy running the village, plus. Nanashi had experienced the same thing with Minato-sama, so she knew exactly what was holding the boy back, guilt. Perhaps if she had spoken up, though. Everyone in the village despises me, even when I don't play tricks. They despise my appearance, behavior, and attire. They despise my name, too. This is not the name I requested. I didn't request my appearance or the treatment I received from the villagers. He didn't look like Kushina, but Minato only mentioned the redhead, so it wasn't difficult to figure out why he was named an Uzumaki. Nanashi had heard that many shinobi didn't agree with the boy getting the name, if only they knew who his mother really was. Even Iruka didn't initially believe it, and I know the old man didn't, but I finally defeated Sasuke in a full-on spar. His eyes showed it to me. Kid, I'm not the right person to train you. I have my own issues, she said, referring to the bottle she was holding. Even a few suggestions will be helpful, perhaps a step in the right direction, similar to yesterday. I simply need assistance of any kind. Look where that got her, rotting in prison. The last person she had attempted to assist was her little cousin, Itachi. Just some guidance, please. To stop her shaking hands, Nanashi took a long swig of sake. Naruto. She was nothing more than trash, and she owed everything to the child's father. What right did she have to train her hero's son? His father's big blue eyes were finally visible when he looked up at her. Advice and some tips, she said, sensing that she would need another drink after this was over. I can get you some books and scrolls, but I don't have time to walk you or teach you tire ninjutsu. But you will have to give them back. Do you get me? His smile was brighter than the sun. It had been a few hours since Naruto had finally fled, but Nanashi had remained outside and greeted Sasuke with a grunt as he passed on his way to one of the other Uchiha training grounds. Apparently, she wasn't good enough company for the boy, and she could understand why. Who would want to deal with a criminal like her? Even her old team sneered the few times they passed in the street. Nanashi stared at her favorite tree, nestled on her favorite training ground. That kid's an idiot, and who could it be? He had always claimed that the entire village was his family, but she was clearly not a part of it, just as she wasn't a part of the Uchiha. Nanashi turned, sipping her sake, and watched as the third Hokage himself stalked towards her, refusing to bow or greet the old bastard. Naruto Uzumaki. He's a good kid, but too many people denigrate him. It appears that you are also a member of that group. That's what the man was here for, I see. The boy's reputation wasn't enhanced by hanging around with known criminals, but she couldn't see how it could get any worse. The brat wanted me to teach him and wouldn't leave me alone. I take it you turned him down. She frowned and looked toward the edge of the clearing, sensing the murderous intent aimed at her, but there was almost glee in his tone. No, he made fun of me. I'll make him a star. Of course, she was lying, but she was certain the man could tell because of how much sarcasm was oozing from her. Are you certain that's a smart idea? The last time he sounded like this, Nanashi couldn't help but laugh at the situation, but now his tone was serious. If I don't stay away, will you put me back in jail? Is that all? Knowing the slick bastard wasn't finished, she held her tongue and said, I cannot lock you up for simply befriending an orphan. Of course, there is still the manner of your recklessness and damage done to many businesses while drunk. Those were all settled already. So why have I been hearing about a Jonin and Chunin incident that happened last night? When she glared at the man, an anbu appeared on her neck, ready for anything. They assaulted me. The fools would have remained silent, but if the old man had pressed them, they would have. Perhaps this incident, and the many future ones, can be avoided, however. You can't expect me to abandon the kid already. The man was about to walk away, but his anbu remained behind her, radiating his intention. Be grateful I am giving you the option. He could simply accuse her of treason and put her in jail. Nanashi assumed it was her own fault, though, since she had been given another chance and had wasted it at her own pity party. Who cared? It was her life, and she could do with it whatever she pleased. Who cared about a village that had stabbed her in the back or a clan that had consistently denigrated her? Her hero also had a son. After tomorrow's council meeting, please let me know your response. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we will be finished. My secretary, please wait. After 5 minutes, Nanashi's breathing stopped and the kunai was removed from her back. Eventually, she was left alone again, as usual, but this time, she was filled with rage. Who the hell was he to tell her who she could teach? As her left hand flashed through 24 half-hand signs in 3 seconds, Nanashi flexed her left hand, wondering briefly if she still had it in her. She sighed deeply and then took a generous swig of her sake, filling her cheeks. With a half-tiger at her lips, she slammed her left foot into the training ground and leaned forward, mentally chanting, fire style, napalm deluge. She sprayed the alcohol and flames mixture into the air, watching as it coated and adhered to her old training tree. The thick liquid flames covered the entire tree in less than a minute, burning it to ash in about 10 minutes. Nanashi didn't remember how long she stood there, watching the flames slowly go out, but she knew that maybe she had let herself go. 10 years ago, she could have burned the tree in the first 3 seconds, but now, she needed more alcohol. Sasuke was taken aback, to put it mildly, when he returned from training for lunch. He went to investigate after hearing a noise at the far end of the compound. Inside the clan vault, he discovered 6 different incarnations of his aunt. A 5th sat in the center, and 4 were pacing around the front. The 4 appeared to be carrying a variety of scrolls, some were being returned, while others were being given to the person on the ground, who was copying down the information they had been given. It was odd, especially in light of the clone's owner. As usual, the 6th person drank sake while sitting beneath a tree outside. He looked over at the inebriated one. I'm guessing you're the original. She muttered, what? Instead, how do you know it was me? He desired to strike something. He was only half serious when he asked, what are you doing? Selling our clan's secrets for more booze or something? Nah, some kid begged me for tips on getting stronger. Told him I refused to actually train him, but he definitely needs to get some taijutsu practice in. To be honest, Sasuke was furious about that. But you consistently refused to assist me. So you're just giving away our secrets because someone asked. He was itching to scream. Our secrets. Ours, she asked, laughing heartily in his face. Kid, you do know over half of the taijutsu scrolls in there were written or fixed by me, right? There hasn't been a taijutsu specialist in the Uchiha clan in over 130 years. Most of the old ones got something wrong, or didn't go into any detail. They were also incomplete or had multiple entries. The Sharingan can only copy what it sees, can't really do much else. I've completed over 123 arts in this library. Only Maida guy knows more than me in this shithole of a village. It took Sasuke a moment to believe that. She tried to take another sip from her bottle but realized it was empty. You know how many times Fugaku or Miyako punished me by locking me in here to piece these together. Ha, joke's on them. They just made me even more awesome. Hey, Sasuke, be a good little cousin and fetch me some more drink, would ya? She said, smiling as she waved it at Sasuke after giving it a few shakes. Sasuke was furious. His hands were clenched, his face was flushed, and he was certain that he would break a tooth if he tightened his jaw any further. So after everything, all this knowledge you have, you still refuse to train me to go after Itachi. All of the drunkenness seemed to disappear when Nanashi said, you don't have what it takes to kill your own brother, Sasuke. He killed my clan. He'd wipe the floor with you in a heartbeat. That's only if I don't train. He turned and stormed away. He would learn on his own if necessary, damn his brother and his cousin. Without them, he had made it this far. If he had to, he would go even farther. Oi, Sasuke. Something started whistling in the air, and he turned. Presuming it was her sake bottle, he made a move to catch it. However, he realized it was a scroll as his fingers encircled it. Confused, he looked up. He rolled his eyes at the lie she was spreading almost every day at this point. If you truly want to compete against Itachi, of all people, you'll need to be able to get one up on me. After all, I once beat the fourth in a duel. Her voice stopped him again as he turned to go. Oi, listen, that's a chakra control exercise. Master it, then show me, and I might just give you something better. I've already mastered the leaf exercise. I can do 10 at a time. Sasuke exclaimed as he turned around and scowled at the pointless scroll. Good, she said with a smile. For that exercise, you need to have mastered the leaf one. Now go on and skedaddle. I've got important work to do. He scowled as a fresh clone appeared, grabbed her bottle, and walked slowly to the main house a while later. A drunk once is a drunk forever. Oh, one last thing. He blinked as the clone materialized in front of him, clutching the scroll firmly and stooping menacingly. Do not, and I repeat, do not attempt this exercise without someone watching you. I mean it, you could get hurt. I don't care if it's another academy student, a teacher, even a civilian. Do not try this without someone watching your back. Hell, ask me for a clone if you need to. He lied with ease, saying, fine. I'll find someone. She gave him a cheek pinch before scurrying off to the main house, saying, good. Now, enjoy. What a stupid woman. As Danzo and the elders sat to his left, Hiruzen Sarutobi made an effort to hide his forced smile. He was unable to pay attention to the other council members because today was crucial. A bill to accept missions had been proposed by Danzo's bloc. The village would benefit financially, but more gray area killings would be possible as well. The village would take the words at face value and permit the assassinations of those who did not need to die, rather than wasting money, as Danzo put it, and investigating requests before approving them. Tobirama-sensei first enacted the law in honor of his brother. This would be a risky vote to protect the Leaf Village from needless conflicts and to keep their hands clean. Danzo said, it seems everyone has arrived. As it turned out, even though there were still a few seats empty, they belonged to extinct clans, were merely ceremonial chairs, or their representatives, like the Senju or even the Uchiha, could not attend. How pointless the votes were. To find out if Tsunade would be willing to give him her vote, he would need to write her a letter. But for the time being, so it would seem, we will now proceed with sealing the. He heard one of the guards say in a muffled voice, no entry. What a drag, is someone trying to break in, Shikaku said as he sat closest to the door on his right. The rest of the men and women began to murmur like wildfire. That couldn't be, I have a letter saying otherwise. Enter, but do not make a mess. The voice said to the Anbu, don't worry, as the door slowly opened. I'm sober enough, maybe. The rest of the room was blinded by Nanashi Uchiha's smile as she entered the room wearing pricey silk robes. Interestingly, there were 3 head seats at the council table. I hope I'm not too late. You wouldn't believe the line to get in here. The Hokage's seat was at the top, while the Senju, Uchiha, and the village founders' seats were seated side by side at the bottom. With a wink at an unflappable Danzo and a sly smile at Hiruzen, Nanashi Uchiha settled into her seat flawlessly. This undoubtedly interfered with his plans. The independents were wild cards, but they had enough votes to force a tie. The Inuzuka in particular, soon would, at most, abstain, resulting in a tie while the other 2 would take sides. However, Danzo was troubled by his threat from the night before if he had persuaded the Uchiha to vote with him. The council finally got to the main topic of the day after discussing the village as a whole and specific missions for an hour and a half. Hirswen swallowed hard when a vote was proposed. Those 4 raised 7 hands. Oddly enough, Nanashi's was not one of them. The woman's smile only widened in response to Hiruzen's scowl. Those against, 6 hands initially joined him, but soon joined him gradually. However, the Hoki and Aburame clans, the other 2 independents, did not. Nevertheless, the Uchiha did not cast a ballot. It was declared a draw. Hiyashi remarked, "We have spent 2 weeks on this single topic." Inoichi Yamanaka retorted, "It would defeat one of our village's core traditions. We would become no better than the mist or the stone." Shibi Aburame added right away, "We shall have to reconvene tomorrow. Both sides should put forward someone to give their side of the argument." "Tomorrow," sneered Hiyashi. After receiving a lot of attention, Nanashi finally said, "I don't have any plans, that sounds good to me." Hiyashi Hyuga narrowed his eyes at Nanashi and said, "Some of us actually have plans to run. We don't have time for this, nor another vote." The Uchiha began, her words dripping with sweet venom, "This is a precious vote, Hiyashi. Besides, it is a tie, meaning both sides should be given time to voice their sides of the argument. How else are we to come together and learn from one another?" Ignoring her words, Hiyashi was already gathering his belongings and getting to his feet. Quickly, Hirswen responded, "We shall regather tomorrow in order to finish this vote. Who will take the for's side, and who will take the against's?" As his former teammate Danzo put his name forward for his own side, Inoichi took the opposing side, allaying many of Hiruzen's anxieties. The third was certain that he would prevail, but it would undoubtedly be a fight. The others gradually left, and he saw Nanashi get up and stretch out of her chair. When his gaze finally met hers, he said, "Nanashi. Lord Third, please stay behind a moment. I would like to ask you something." Eventually, it was just the 2 in the hidden Anbu. It took a few minutes for the others to depart, with many getting into their own private arguments. After a moment, Nanashi demanded, "What do you want?" For someone who had spent so much time in the blood prison, he thought her backbone was strange. "Is that any way to speak to your cage?" His only response was silence. "What are you doing here, Uchiha? You haven't joined a council meeting since being freed 2 years ago." Her sarcasm was evident as she said, "You reminded me of my duty last night, my lord. This topic is one we have discussed for 2 weeks now. Perhaps it is best you sit this vote out tomorrow. I'm sure with Lords Yamanaka and Shimura voicing their sides, I'll catch on quick." Nanashi. As he left, the old war hawk whispered to her, but Hiruzen couldn't hear it over the others. "In fact, I think Danzo's side is already calling to me. This one vote could tear down our walls. Assassinations are already thoroughly looked over before we ever accept them. This vote would allow nearly any and everyone to be placed in our sights. Nothing I'm not used to, Lord Third." How could he have forgotten? Before her true nature became apparent, she was a huge asset. "How many assassinations did you have during the war, my dear?" Without hesitation, she said, 13. 13 missions I slaughtered my way through. Jonin, Chunin, Genin, civilians. Under your order, I wiped out camps and snuck into inn rooms. All blame placed on missing Nin or other villages. I wasn't even 15 by that point. At that time, she was pulled from the front lines by psychological problems. He thought it had been 6 months. Then, after slicing through the battlefield once more for 4 months, the war came to an end. Who do you place fault in, Nanashi? The blood-drenched Uchiha asked as he made his way back home. Fault, for the assassinations. Those are already in my hands. Hirswen replied, no, your stay in prison. Was it my fault for sending a capable shinobi onto the battlefield, or do you place the fault on your clan? You were quite vocal in your hatred for the deceased. Or perhaps you place the blame on yourself. Perhaps even Minato. Her frown wasn't shocking, but what was surprising was the poison in her eyes. Lord Minato had nothing to do with this. You know, it's funny, he even wrote to me, swearing up and down how he was already working on getting me out of there. For 2 months, I waited for another word until finally Miyako stopped by. He took such pleasure in telling me how our Lord perished not even a day after I received my letter. No, the blame for my incarceration is placed equally on yours and my clan's shoulders. All I ever did was listen to my commanders, and all it ever got me was pain and suffering. Perhaps you should not have committed the crime that put you in there. Enraged, she leapt to her feet, and 3 Anbu were at her sides and back in an instant. There was a kunai on her chest, stomach, and neck. The 3 took a step back when Hiruzen waved a hand, but they stayed. Perhaps I should simply side with Danzo. According to her own admission, she would most likely support Danzo if he even brought up his role in the massacre because she despises both him and her family. If that is what you wished, you would have done so already. Now tell me what it is you want. Is it so hard to be left alone? Have you not been for the last 2 years? Call your dogs off of my shadow, and never tell me who I can interact with again, she said, scoffing before laughing uncontrollably. Naruto, I don't believe that is possible. The kid needs something. I already told him I wouldn't teach him, just give him pointers. Let me continue this, and I'll give you my vote. If not, well, I've got a letter with a friend that's to be delivered to Danzo in an hour. I'm sure you can guess what's in it. Documents renouncing her right to vote. Hiruzen had no doubts. He intended to humiliate the woman by saying, "Why are you so infatuated with a boy? He is not his father. And I am not mine. Yet unlike me, Naruto should be more like his. But no, I do not wish for him to become his father. I merely wish for him to become stronger, so that he can earn his father's name. I'm sure you have your reasons for denying him the name Namikaze, but if he becomes strong enough, perhaps you'd be willing to give it back to him." He acknowledged, "When he makes Jonin. Only then will I deem him strong enough to hold that name." Hiruzen could only frown behind his hands as she giggled at a joke in her own mind. "Do you want to hear something funny?" He said nothing. Before Minato-sama became Jonin, there were 17 other Namikazes in the village. Not a one was related, except for a single marriage. One was another Jonin, and another was even an Anbu. You see, the name was simply a random one on a list of 50 that the Konoha orphanage would use for the children in their care. For over 30 years, that name was worthless, given only to the lowest of the low. Now half the village would kill for that name. There was a time you wished it was yours as well. It was all in her smile. Naruto is not to know of his parents. All I want is to offer the kid some advice. I doubt I'll ever actually train the brat. I'm not cut out to be a teacher. Certainly not strong enough to train the kid. I may have graduated early and hit Jonin at 14, but I'm no Itachi or Kakashi. I'm just a nobody with some minor skill." Hiruzen just stared at the woman for almost 10 minutes, his mind racing with 100 possible outcomes. Eventually, however, vote on any issues Y Block wants, and you may have your freedom. She walked around the table and toward the door, her poisonous tongue dripping with sarcasm. "Pleasure doing business with you, Lord Third." All he wanted was to avoid regretting this choice. As he entered his private training area, Sasuke frowned and saw his boisterous blonde classmate running around the nearby small pond. "Dobi, this fool has no right to enter clan property." "Tem," he asked as the orange monstrosity approached him at a leisurely jog, his foolish expression unmistakable. "What the hell are you doing here?" The irritating voice made Sasuke grit his teeth. "I should be asking you that. This is a private training ground." Really?" he asked, surveying the area. "I don't see your name on the trees here." Sasuke's hand dropped to his kunai pouch, his eyes blazing with rage. "Besides, Nan-chan said I could use this one. The last training grounds I was at, I got kicked out by some shunin, even though I booked the place." "Nanashi, Nan-chan, it isn't possible, wait. The student Nanashi had been referring to couldn't be Naruto, could he? He would simply ignore the blonde. Whatever, just keep your obnoxiousness down." He needed to master this tree-walking exercise quickly. The next time they sparred, he would pummel the annoyance. He pulled out the notes on the technique and ignored the other boy as he made his way to the tallest tree at the edge of the area. He ignored the cautions and did as he was told right away. This method stuck the user to an object, in contrast to the leaf exercise, which stuck objects to the user. He would eventually be able to walk on the ceiling. There was also mention of a water walking technique. As the book advised, he approached the tree and marked his advancement by drawing a kunai. He started sprinting and got a decent start, but he quickly lost his balance and fell through the air. He twisted, cut a line, and landed smoothly. As Naruto's whispered word reached Sasuke, he grinned and said, "Cool." By night's end, he could become proficient in this technique. All Nanashi needed to do was present him with something more difficult. At this rate, she would be forced to sign the early graduation paperwork. He would soon catch up to his brother. Sasuke kept running up the tree, oblivious to the sun's gradual descent toward the horizon, but soon he was reaching the point where he was repeatedly carving the same 3 or 4 lines. It was annoying. He couldn't leave it here, though. This was what he needed. Exhausted, he backed up as far as he could and started running in a dead sprint. He was a third of the way up the tree after taking 2, 4, 8, and 16 steps. He was almost at the top of his game when something went wrong. Something struck his skull as his foot slipped. He was struck by chakra exhaustion, lost his breath, and fell from the tree, falling toward the ground. Sasuke. His eyes darkened as he fell, the kunai slipping from his hands as the darkness attempted to engulf him. This was no time for him to die. However, Sasuke's body resisted his attempts to twist in order to soften his landing. But just before it struck him and the two of them crunched to the ground, he saw something orange through the haze. As he moved Sasuke away from him, Naruto moaned. He looked at his hand, which was killing him, with a great deal of fear, and immediately felt regret. Damn it, Tem. He was bending his 2 broken fingers awkwardly to the side. To be honest, he was shocked that the pain wasn't greater. The pain was only gradually subsiding even now. What had it been called by Iruka-sensei? Whatever it was, Adran, it made no difference. He had no doubt that it would soon begin anew. Naruto slapped the brunette awake with his unbroken hand after Sasuke moaned. He cried out, "Are you hurt?" If not, he would be after Naruto finished with him. Sasuke slowly sat up and clutched his head, saying, "Shut up, Dobi." Naruto scowled and pushed the brunette away from him, saying, "Oi. Shouldn't you be thanking me? See if I ever help you again." I had it. Naruto stood, rolling his eyes and frowning at his left hand's twisted fingers. Sure you did. He would have to wait in the hospital waiting room for hours before someone noticed him. His allowance would be completely depleted for the next 2 or 3 months due to the expense alone. It appears that instant ramen was the only option. He was startled out of his reverie by Sasuke's question, "Your hand?" "Huh, oh yeah, I think you broke it when I tried to catch you." Sasuke said, "Wait, that's a dumb question. Does it hurt?" "Actually no, it doesn't really hurt," said Naruto, shaking his head. Sasuke grimaced as the blonde waved his hand, asking, "What? You must be in shock." "No, I'm not really shocked either." Sasuke interrupted, "No, that's," leaving Naruto to stare in disbelief. "Never mind, you need to go to the hospital." He grumbled at the reminder, "Yeah, it's gonna take hours for them to see me. And here I was hoping to get some more training in today." "Thanks a lot, Tem. Dobi." Sasuke responded right away, "But it should only take a few minutes for someone to see you, you know. Anytime I get injured, someone helps within a few minutes. Must be nice, coming from a clan." Naruto was a little offended by the remark, but before he could respond, Sasuke grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the training area. "Come on, Dobi, I think my cousin is back from the council meeting." Nan-chan's a part of the council. It was the first time she's ever been. Now come on, we need to get to her before she gets too drunk. "Why her? She has some training in medical ninjutsu, I think," grunted Sasuke. "You think? She's helped me a few times before. Though I prefer going to the hospital. That doesn't give me much confidence. Wait, I think she did something to me the other night." Ignoring him, Sasuke decided to drag the blonde through the woods as he made his way back to the compound. "Didn't I say to make sure someone was with you when you trained?" As the 2 boys shuffled in front of the woman's door, Naruto helpfully added, "I was there." She sighed and opened the door to return to the house, asking, "But you weren't prepared, were you? Come on in, but don't bleed anywhere." Sasuke scoffed while Naruto scratched his head. "But neither of us are bleeding. Check the sides of your heads." As the two boys looked at one another, the dark red substance was indeed matted in their hair. Now hurry up, I've got places to be, drinks to drink. Ignoring him, she led the two into the living room and gestured for them to sit on the couch. Isn't it people to meet? She asked. All right, let's look at your heads first. Looking up at her, Sasuke said, his fingers are really bad. Really, really, bad. Naruto gave his confirmation. All she did was snort. Is it in pain? No. Then we'll check your heads first. If you've got brain damage, we'll need to get you to the hospital immediately. After a few minutes, she finally reached out and took his hand. So it really doesn't hurt? Not a bit, even when I do this? She asked, flicking the two fingers, but aside from the boy's irritated bark, he acknowledged there was no pain. But the bottle hurt the other night, right? Bottle? Inquired Sasuke. Yeah, it did. Some drunk guy hit me in the back of the head. That was already healing as well by the time I looked at it. Hey, tell me, Naruto, does your hand look as bad as it did when you first saw it? With the hand raised to his face, Naruto gazed fixedly. Even though the fingers were still broken and bent, he noticed that they didn't appear to be as twisted the closer he looked. I think it looks a little better. Not by much, though. Squeezing the fingers, Nanashi again failed to elicit a response. But he hissed when she dug a nail into his wrist. Seems like you've got your own little healing factor. I wonder why it numbed the area, though. A healing factor. What's that? Could be a Kekkei Genkai. Nanashi whispered as she attempted to numb the entire arm by pressing her own chakra into it. Be happy I'm sober right now, kid, or close enough? He asked, attempting to move his now numb arm, Kekkei Genkai. Nanashi, still working on his hand, flicked his ear and said, stop that. And that's a bloodline. Could be something from one of your parents. There's a few rare or extinct families with some type of regeneration. Really? Exclaimed Naruto. It was helpful to know anything about his family. Would we be able to narrow that down? Who knows? I could look, but those clans are practically extinct, like I said. But it could also be a new mutation. Every once in a while, one pops up. Thanks. Naruto was thrilled at the thought, but he jerked when a sharp pain shot up his arm, rang in his neck, and left his fingers. Gah. Nanashi pulled him forward and said, hold still. That's going to happen one more time as I fix your next finger. It seems whatever this bloodline is, it's actively fighting against my chakra. So you'll start to feel something soon. Seems the numbing effect is wearing off. As the woman went back to work, Naruto grimaced but braced himself. The woman stuck her head back into the room and the two boys turned back to her, saying, oh, Sasuke. You're banned from practicing tree climbing now. What? She gestured to Naruto and said, you can only do it when I'm around, or when that brat's around. And speaking of the brat, here's a taijutsu scroll, kid. You really need to work on that. Mix and match it, you'll figure it out on your own. Nanashi waved one final time before heading back down the hallway and vanishing into a room as a door clicked shut. So you were the one that she was making that for? Confused, Naruto turned to face his opponent. Sasuke started to move away, saying, nothing, Dobi. Just stay out of my way. Says you, Tem. Naruto grabbed the older boy's arm as he quickly caught up to him. Hey, you heard Nan-chan, you can't train without me. It's just for the chakra control exercise, and I don't care what she says. I'll use whatever technique I want. Well, she is barely my family, so she can't tell me what to do. Naruto yelled, oi, in the boy's face. Are you really going to risk yourself like that again? You're already low on chakra. Don't you think you're pushing it a bit? Sasuke remained silent, biting his tongue. Listen, Naruto said, reluctantly acknowledging that he needed Sasuke. You need someone to watch out for you so you don't break your neck, right? The other boy just averted his gaze, avoiding eye contact. Meanwhile, I need someone to spar against with this new style. So why don't we split our time? Sasuke finally said, I'm listening. 1 hour of me, then 1 of you, and so on until night falls. Then I need to get back home for the academy tomorrow. TCH. Fine. But don't even think about stopping me unless I'm actually falling. And don't try to sabotage my awesomeness with this new technique. Examining the handwritten scroll, Naruto scowled. There were 5 distinct styles on it, but they were only partials. Even Sasuke was perplexed as to why, especially after learning that one of the styles was the interceptor fist. What's that? The Uchiha clan's taijutsu style. But, what? Sasuke scowled as he drew the scroll closer. It's been cannibalized. What's that mean? You really are a dobi. Hey, like all taijutsu styles, you have to follow the steps so that everything flows together. There are sequences to them so that it's fluid. But this isn't the correct steps. Is it sabotaged? Naruto asked, his chest aching. I don't think so. Sasuke himself appeared perplexed as he examined it further. What was it that Nanashi said? She said to mix and match it. The other boy drew Naruto close to him and pointed at the paper with a stick, saying, come here, 1 second. Look, this first part of the interceptor fist is its beginning stance. I know that for a fact. It's the same for its intermediate style that I just picked up as well. But when you finish here, I think if you go to this style, the Gakken, or strong fist style, then you can continue it here. Naruto has already forgotten the name. But what about the rest of the Uchiha style? Sasuke pointed to one of the middle sequences and drew it to the start of another, saying, maybe it connects later. Or look at this part. This middle part flows into the beginning here, and then to the end of the interceptor section. Naruto collapsed onto his back, saying, why's this gotta be so complicated? Sasuke was also perplexed. I would say simply copy each of the sequences and practice them separately at first. So the middles flow to the beginnings, then the ends, then they flip and go upside down and, what the hell is she doing to me? Naruto began to explain. Sasuke continued to stare at the scroll once, examining the other 3 styles, and momentarily pondered why the gentle fist style sounded so familiar. Just get to practicing, dobi. After 3 hours, just as Sasuke completed his final attempt, Naruto finally gave up. After pausing for an hour each time, he had to admit that it was simple. He asked the blonde, bored of it finally. It's insane. Naruto had watched his opponent as he used some of the list's simpler katas, but it was still difficult. It felt wrong to constantly stop and go, to pause what seemed like a good set in order to skip a few steps. I think you cousin is crazy. You're telling me, so how about you, Tem? You're just running up a tree over and over again. How is that fun? Nanashi promised me she'd teach me something better if I could master this chakra control exercise. Oh right, I forgot it was a control. Hey, let me look at that scroll. I bet I could get it done faster than you. You can't even get 2 leaves at once in class. So, Sasuke smiled at his blonde opponent, but it seemed like the title was losing ground every second. The tree walking exercise can't only begin after the user has mastered the leaf exercise, meaning you need to hold 10 leaves for 5 minutes straight. That is so not true. Pointing at the top warning, Sasuke thrust the scroll into the other boy's face. Even Nanashi said so maybe once you can do 10 leaves, I'll show you this. Just you wait, Tem. I'll master the leaf exercise, and these taijutsu styles. You'll be weeping in class when I show off my supreme skills. Naruto quickly picked up several leaves from the ground, adhering more than a dozen to his body before blowing them all off in an instant as he fell into a sitting position. Hey, got any tips? This is going to be a long evening, Sasuke realized with a sigh. There are 8 leaves. As the seconds went by, Naruto held that many. Even though he really wanted to count, he wasn't, but the time must be approaching, right? There are 8 leaves. The green objects were drawn close to his body as his chakra moved beneath his skin. Nanashi's voice cut through the atmosphere, that's time. Now, however, Naruto was wiser. Nanashi would always try her hardest to divert them from their training sessions, whether it was by purposefully lying or engaging in a drunken rambling session. She had been the most inebriated person he had ever seen when she said, a shinobi must always know the truth. No matter who tells you something, always listen to your own voice above anyone else. Even Sasuke was taken aback by the well-reasoned and astute remarks. She couldn't even recall seeing them on that particular day. The soft beeping sound that announced, it's actually time now, startled Naruto out of his reverie. He gasped, dropped the leaves, and landed on his back, allowing his legs to fall out from under him. Oh my god, if I have to do that again, I'm going to die of boredom. Naruto grinned to himself as Nanashi laughed and said, congrats, kid, only 2 more to go and you can finally learn the basics. According to old man Ichiraku, the woman was usually blitzed, but she was always pleasant to be around. Basics, schmasics, I'll be the king of chakra control at this rate. It's been 2 months. Do you really think you're some kind of prodigy? Sasuke grumbled. It only took me a month from start to finish. To Sasuke's annoyance, Nanashi always gave him a present when he achieved a new goal, even though the tree exercise and water walking ones only allowed him to receive one reward each time. Naruto stuck his tongue out but spun towards the adult nearby, grinning proudly at her, asking, "So, do I get my present?" "Sure, brat, free ramen on me. The finest prize. In another 2 months, you might finally get the 9th leaf for 5 minutes." Naruto said, "Shut it, Tem." But his smile remained fixed. According to Nanashi, it would be simpler for him to obtain more leaves if he could stick more. 3 weeks later, he was at 8, even though it had taken more than a month to reach 4. With the early graduation test approaching, he was catching up to Sasuke. His thoughts were interrupted by Nanashi's voice, "Let's go get that ramen. I'm starving." His favorite food took its place. "Hey, Nan-chan, I got a question for you." He smiled as he heard her whisper, "There you go with that Nan-chan crap again." "Yeah sure, shoot, brat. Is it true you once beat the 4th Hokage?" "Of course it's not true, Dobi, why would you even bring that up?" Sasuke said, slapping the blonde on the back of the head as soon as he heard the question. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and glared at his opponent as Nanashi burst out laughing. "Shut it, duck butt. I asked her, not you. It's pretty obvious." Nanashi gave the blonde boy a wink and said, "Yes, it's true." "Really? Here we go again." The woman practically glowed as Nanashi and Naruto both stuck their tongues out at the other boy. "It really is. You see, just before the end of the war was announced, I had a secret meeting with Minato-sama." "Cool. Did he train you?" She swirled the contents of her bottle while looking down at it with a sorrowful smile. "Sadly, no, just gave me some advice. That is until I challenged him to a spar. I wanted to see whose speed was better. And you beat him, huh? It was easy. He didn't even get off any of his signature jutsu. You're so cool." But Sasuke rolled his eyes at the blonde's joy. "It's not true, Naruto. She's been spouting this nonsense for 2 years. No one believes it. Because people can't handle the truth. And what truth is that?" "My awesomeness. Can you teach me how to be that strong?" Naruto asked, leaping up and down in front of the woman in a giddy manner. She stuck her tongue out at Sasuke, saying, "At least someone appreciates me. But who knows, kid? I'm a little out of practice. Maybe if you can complete the water walking technique, we might be able to talk then." "Yes," Naruto exclaimed, whooping and yelling as he leapt around in the middle of the road. "I'll master it in 2 months. No, 1 month. Then I'll beat Sasuke." Then the old man. Sasuke shook his head and watched in increasing horror as the woman struck a pose, saying, "You're just making her head bigger, Dobi. Worry not, my children. For I shall show you the path to greatness." "Greatness? Is that what you call the bottom of a sake barrel?" While the boys searched for the source, Nanashi froze at the sound of the voice. "Are you trying to peddle that story around again, Nanashi?" A white-haired man with a half-eaten apple in his other hand shuffled slowly towards the group from a nearby stall. He was reading an orange book that Naruto vaguely recognized. He questioned how the man was eating in the first place after noticing the mask covering his face. Whispering, "Hitaki, you know, I had heard you weren't making a mess of the bars anymore. I almost thought about asking Guy to check up on you, make sure you were still among us." She yelled at the man, "Well, I'm here, so you can jog on somewhere." Naruto blinked as the man in the mask grinned. "Oh, why so hostile, Nan-chan?" It was a little unsettling. "Shouldn't I be the angry one?" To the confusion of the boys, she bit her tongue and turned away, glaring at the ground. "And why the hell?" she said. "You were talking about my sensei, you know, as well as this village's leader. Minato-sensei certainly wouldn't have lost to someone of your caliber. How convenient you only sprouted after his passing. Bite me, Hitaki." The man turned to the boys and said, happy, ignoring the woman. "You kids really shouldn't be hanging out with someone who lies about their own cage like that. And you should especially not listen to a thief like her, either." "How's Obito's eye doing you?" Nanashi growled at the man, "You've got a lot of nerve calling me a thief." A smothering presence pervaded the air, but Hitaki's joy never left his face. "I'd watch your words, Uchiha. Obito was worth 1,000 of the likes of you." She waved at the orange book he was holding and said, "He was certainly worth more than you fucking pervert." At last, Kakashi moved forward and shifted the subject while frowning behind his mask. "Even if Minato-sensei somehow lost to you, Uchiha, It merely meant that he pitied you. Which certainly wouldn't surprise me. Hey, Naruto exclaimed. You take that back. Stay out of this, Naruto. You may not know it, but this woman is a criminal. A dangerous one, and a thief. Kids like you shouldn't have to deal with someone who was given a second chance and squandered it. Nanashi's not a criminal, she's my sensei, and a friend. Just cause you don't believe she beat the fourth doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because guess what, I believe her. Minato was the strongest, Naruto cut in, and that doesn't mean jack, because just like how the old man is the current strongest, I'll one day beat him and take that hat, believe it. And when I do, I'll make sure everyone knows who exactly helped me get there. She muttered, Naruto, behind him as he strode ahead. And it definitely wasn't you, or anyone else, who makes themselves happy by putting other people down. I'm not happy putting her down, I'm just trying to correct. That's what they all say, punk. Sasuke approached Naruto's side and gestured to his flak jacket. How could someone like you be a jonin if you put down those below them? I'm not trying to. Aren't jonin supposed to be the best of this village? A pillar to look up to. Naruto jabbed at the man's abdomen. Some pillar you are. Putting people down. Why damn it. It's people like you that make me want to leave this place. The crowd fell silent, and even Kakashi took a step back. He's right, Sasuke murmured as he clenched at the individual. I have ears, you know. I hear all the villagers whisper, not just about me, but as Nanashi as well. I pretend that I don't care, but she's the only family I have left. And it kills me to turn the other cheek whenever someone talks about her. But the worst part is that at any point she can pull the clan, its money, its land, and its contracts from the village at any point. But she doesn't. She continues to stay here and continues to take your abuses, and I don't know why. Nanashi is. A wad of Ryo was dangled in front of Naruto's face, and he blinked, saying, Here. For you two's ramen. I need to go. Don't worry about what adults say, kids. What we say doesn't matter in the long run. With each step, the woman practically drowned herself in her bottle, and Naruto could only watch in disbelief. It was awful. He disliked the way the woman behaved. That wasn't fair to someone as kind as her. Now, kids, what's the big idea? Sasuke was ahead of him, but Naruto was right behind him, giving the white-haired man a vindictive glare. Yeah, who the hell are you to speak to her like that? Nanashi Uchiha is a drunkard who openly lies. Well, at least she treats me like a human being. Naruto yelled. Well, Naruto, I think you are. Shove it. Sasuke jumped in, angry. Do you know how much better she's gotten with her drinking? She hasn't been aggressive for more than a month, and now. Sasuke had never appeared so enraged to Naruto. She's probably going to go drown herself in sake again. Nanashi said, You're an asshole, you pervert. And Naruto repeated it with all the venom he could muster. Pervert, is that Kakashi Hatake? People were whispering to each other as a crowd began to form. Through the crowds, two women were saying, Oi, dog breath. One was dressed much more modestly, while the other was quite brash in her trench coat and fishnet. Are you reading that smut to children again, or something? Now, Anko, Kakashi attempted to retreat. Kakashi, didn't I warn you what would happen if I caught you reading that junk in public again? Naruto had more pressing issues to deal with than watching the white-haired man get into trouble with the ladies or trying to figure out what they were discussing. He pulled Sasuke away from the group by grabbing his arm. The other boy attempted to dismiss him. Naruto, stop, I'm not in the mood for Ram. She definitely needed someone right now. Come on, Tem. The ramen can wait. We need to go see Nanashi. The man begged for mercy as the two women tore him to pieces, but they fled instead. The two had followed Nanashi back to the Uchiha compound, but instead of finding her in the main house as Sasuke had initially thought, they discovered her sitting in the center of the ground floor of the records hall. Shouldn't you two be at Ichiraku's? The woman, surrounded by open books and scrolls, took a long drag from her bottle, and Naruto winced. Sasuke said, You're supposed to be there with us, at last. I'm surprised you're the one saying that, Sasuke. Naruto entered the room and said, He's not wrong, though. You barely know me, brat. Go eat your reward, I'm busy. Ignoring the scrolls beneath his feet, Naruto stomped to her side with a sigh. You don't need to push us aside because of that jerk, you know. We don't believe a word he said. And what if he was right? What if I am a criminal, a thief? Are you? Of course not. Then are you a liar? Sasuke asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. Only on missions. Then why should we believe some stranger over you? You're both fools then. At last, Naruto stood in front of her, beaming broadly. You're not the first person to call me that. But at least I'm on your side. We both are. And I was serious about what I said earlier, Nan-chan. There's been a few times where I've wanted to leave this village. But between the old man, Iruka, and now you and the Tem, I don't think I could. Did he hear that sniffling? You should never say something so lightly. Her short black hair obscured her eyes, making it impossible for him to see her face. But she had trembling shoulders. It's true though, and if Sasuke is right, and you ever leave the village, just tell me and I'll come. She yelled, stop, you can't just say things like that. According to Sasuke, but if the village treats you, us, then as a clan leader, and once of the founders, we Uchiha. As she sobbed, Nanashi grabbed the two boys and pulled them in by putting her arms around their necks. Never, ever, ever, say you'll leave this village again, you understand me. But, the woman interrupted Naruto. Stop, no matter who you argue with, who you fight with, who you love, or who you hate. This village is your home. And I want you both to promise to never say that you'd ever leave again. You hear me? But, promise me. I promise. Sasuke followed quickly. I promise as well, Nanashi. She tried not to cry as she said, good, kids like you shouldn't be worried about something like that. But don't you ever forget, words have consequences. Especially in a shinobi village. I'm not the best at keeping my mouth shut, but I'm sure we can work something out. Now come on. Sasuke's stomach wouldn't stop growling the entire way over. Let's go eat some ramen. Can it, Dobi? The gentle fist is a fast-hitting style. It has effective stopping power and is generally one of my go-tos when subduing. I learned the style from scrolls at the age of 11 and continued its study for 2 years before finally using it during the war to disable several of my targets when bringing in informants or when bloodshed wasn't necessary. It is the style utilized by the Hyuga clan of Konoha. The parts you are learning currently were taken during the Warring Clan era, which means they don't fall under the Clan Protection Acts. With a sigh, Naruto withdrew his hands from his knees and started the opening scene again. You cannot utilize the style to its full potential at the moment. Once your chakra control is up to snuff, after you learn water walking, you'll be able to drop people with your fingertips. For the time being, you'll learn the 3 sequences in the notes, and you'll learn them well. For the 67th time that day, he stabbed at the target with his fingers while his arms burned. Even though the sun was now swimming along the horizon, Nanashi encouraged him to continue until he reached 75. 100 was my go-to when I was learning a new style, 200 was the standard for anything else. The gentle fist was till I dropped alongside the interceptor and the strong fist. You'll learn, you'll get better, you'll rise to the top. Before repeating the 3, he would complete 5 sets of each sequence. It was difficult to learn bits and pieces of a style. Can't I just learn the whole thing? He had to abruptly stop moving and change to a new part all the time. Do you have 6 years to learn the basics? You're copying just fine at the moment. In 5 years, you can learn the rest, but for the time being, just copy what's in the scroll. As you learn the other pieces of this set, you'll get the hang of it. Why not learn just one style at a time? Call it a hunch. I think you'll get it down faster. Strike, up, down. After completing the steps, he finally reached his goal of 75 and passed out as the stars in the sky started to flicker. This is torture. You'll be fine. Now get up. Sasuke's just finished his water walking for the day. How do you know? My clone popped. Hurry or you'll miss dinner. During the weekends, Naruto would train with the 2 Uchihas all day, eat breakfast at home, pack a lunch, and then end the day with dinner with Sasuke and Nanashi. Sasuke occasionally prepared meals, but Nanashi usually ordered takeout because she believed that cooking was a sin. The first night, she had told the boys, Lord Fourth once told me it was edible. Biggest compliment I ever received. Unbelieving that Naruto had spent the entire night in the restroom, Iruka forced him to run weighted laps around the school. As Nanashi scraped her veggies onto a distracted Sasuke's plate, Naruto yelled, "Hey!" With his mouth full of food. You said earlier today that you always trained till you dropped growing up. Sasuke took notice of that. It's bad for your health, and can lead to problems later on in your life. While it's bad for me and Sasuke, However, it's a little worse for you, Naruto. Sasuke inquired, shouldn't he be better off thanks to his healing factor? That's the issue. Naruto's muscles are healing faster than they can stretch. Sure, it cuts down on his exhaustion, but he's not getting the optimal increases. Which means he has to work till exhaustion. If he doesn't, he only gets minimal returns. Naruto shivered as he thought about his demanding workouts. So I'm going to have to keep up these exercises. No, thanked Kami, you'll have to keep doing more and more as your body gets used to it. You'll probably end up doing 200 or more katas a day. Boo, Sasuke, on the other hand, you'll need to actually watch yourself. Training to exhaustion will only be detrimental to you. You'll be more easily fatigued, you'll be weaker, and your endurance will drop like a fly in winter. Don't you always talk about how you trained yourself to exhaustion? Replied Naruto. I specifically remember you telling me off the last 2 months for doing that, and yet you admit of doing it yourself, Sasuke said in a deadpan tone. Well, I have my reasons. To Sasuke, Naruto muttered, sounds suspicious. If you must know, she said with a scowl, yes, I always trained myself to the point of exhaustion. While I absorbed taijutsu styles like a sponge, I hadn't realized how dangerous it was to work myself to death. That is until one day. You see, I started looking into anatomy, mostly on my joints and muscles, to see just how far I could push myself while learning different styles. One that comes to mind is the Asura style. It involves being able to dislocate your limbs and pop your joints for better maneuverability. Sasuke wrinkled his nose and Naruto muttered, cool. Quite. Anyhow, that's when I learned muscles needed to heal before you could get the optimum progress. So I learned how to cheat. Teach me, oh master. The two Uchiha snorted as the blonde fell to the ground in adoration. You don't need this method, brat. You're already cheating more than me. Boo. Nanashi grinned and went on with her explanation. I learned medical ninjutsu. I'd train myself to exhaustion, then heal my muscles and repeat it until I was either out of chakra or couldn't lift a finger anymore. Took me a few months to get to that point, but it at least helped to boost my chakra control as the exercises are much harder than simple water walking. It worked, though. As I've said before, I hit Jonin at 14 by this way. So because of Naruto regeneration, Sasuke's face was covered in an irate shadow. Oh please, Tem, you've already got a leg up on me. This just evens the playing field. She ruffled the boy's hair and said, he's not wrong. No offense to Naruto, but you've got talent on your side, Sasuke. Just look at how fast you're running through your chakra control exercises. With his fists clenched, Sasuke gazed up at his cousin, his eyes blazing. But still, can you teach me medical ninjutsu? He asked. It's a long, hard, and boring journey. I can handle it. Plus, while I'm not a prodigy in it, I did have a small bit of talent for medical ninjutsu. You, on the other hand, I can already tell, will be most likely an elemental ninjutsu specialist. There's a little overlap there, but not by much. If I can at least learn the basics. Once you master the next few chakra control exercises, I might consider teaching you it. There's more. Naruto yelled angrily. Tree walking was something he had only recently begun. Oh yeah, she said with a smile. Yeah, there's plenty more. Next stop is going to be waterfall walking. It's going to be fun. But for you, Naruto, you're going to need even more. What? That's not fair. Consider it a complication forced onto you by your own strength. Wah, you're such a doby. Now, Nanashi said, cutting the two off before a fight could start. You, Naruto, have a frankly massive chakra reserve. One I'm sure will continue to grow as you get older. Really, while Sasuke does have talent, there's another reason he's so good at control exercises compared to you. Uchiha, who was younger, gave her a grumpy look. Sasuke, you definitely have reserves higher than your official level. As an academy student, you have genin level reserves that frankly will continue to expand exponentially as you complete more and more exercises. By the time you graduate, you'll probably compare to your average chunin. Naruto, on the other hand, you're practically an ocean. Really, he was such a lively young man. Yes, there's probably only 3 or 4 shinobi in this village with more chakra than you. When I first met you, I would have said you were probably mid-jonin levels, but now, give it a year and you'll have more than the old man. For once, Naruto remained silent as the information went through his head. More than, Gigi. It's why chakra control is so hard for you. You'll continue to grow as well, which means you will never be able to stop your chakra control exercises. Even a month off would scatter your training. Aw man, but how is that possible? Naturally, Nanashi was lying just a little bit, but she had to. Although Naruto was technically only at mid-Jonin reserves, she could taste the power evaporating from him occasionally when he fell from fatigue, and then he would be bouncing off the walls once more. So that ocean was still inside him, even though he might not be able to pull it on command. I'd put it down to your regeneration ability. Most likely, anytime you hurt yourself, your body would heal it as fast as it could. Which expends chakra, which widens and stretches your reserves. So ever since you were a baby, you've been exercising your coils. Now that you've actually started training to your full potential, she continued. I've been getting more and more awesome. Sure, we'll go with that. You, on the other hand, Sasuke, have something Naruto will never have, she said, sighing at her younger cousin's brittle ego as a sour expression crossed his face. With bitterness, he asked, and what's that? You're a Uchiha, which means you'll always have a one-up on the brat. With his chakra control the way it is, I doubt he'll ever succeed in genjutsu, which means he's easy pickings once you unlock our bloodline. Oi, Sasuke looked down at the ground and said, but, it's not guaranteed. Huh, a bewildered Naruto inquired, what's not guaranteed? Sasuke muttered, the Sharingan. Only about a third of Uchiha are able to unlock it. That doesn't mean you won't. You don't even have one, Nanashi. Sadly, she grinned down at the boy. To be honest, she wouldn't be shocked if the boy didn't already have it and was just repressing it. I'm sure you'll gain one, Sasuke. You've got this, Sasuke. If the slaughter didn't open it, then. A few days later, Naruto entered the classroom with a half-hearted smile on his face and rolled his still sore shoulders. He had told Nanashi last night that he would try to impress her by pushing to 85 sets. He intended to end the evening at age 78, but she insisted that promises should be kept. I always keep my promises, but that wasn't a promise, he simply wanted to skip class and return to his bed. Dobi, Tem. With a moan, he collapsed into the seat next to Sasuke. I told you to just stick with 75 for a while longer. No one asked you, are you ready for the exam? Ready as ever, was the response. This time, Naruto was going to graduate. Like he was going to continue his education for another 2 years. Gotta make Nan-chan proud. At least she let you sign up for it. Sasuke had been pouting for the past 2 weeks, and they had even gotten into a heated argument before Nanashi snapped them both out of it. I can't control Naruto. If he wants to take the graduation exam early, I can't stop him. Do I think it's a horrible idea? Yes. Do I think he'll regret it? Yes. But that's his choice. I'm sure, pass or fail, he'll be alright. You, Sasuke, have 2 more years to be a child. You're already better than most graduating genin, and more than a few who've been in the Corps for a year now. But you'll grow at the same speed whether you're part of a team or learning under me. Though I'd like to say I'm certainly the better choice between your run-of-the-mill jonin. Do you even know how to use the clone jutsu properly? Of course I do. He had both good and bad days. Naruto, however, was certain he could get away with it for the time being, particularly if he attempted to pull a practical joke and call forth a few dozen. It's easier when I make a lot at one time, anyway. Naruto nodded to his lone friend in the room and waited for the chunin in charge that year to pick him and the other pupils up. Then good luck. After a difficult wait, he finally got up from his chair and left the room with 2 other people. This was something he could do. Don't speak, Naruto. His teacher knelt over him and held him close while he choked out, I'm sorry. His eyes were filled with tears. You've got nothing to apologize for. He sobbed, but I let you down. Sasuke was standing close by, glaring at the ground and flinching at the noises, but his fists were clenched in rage. You could never let me down, brat. Unless you got addicted to Jiraiya-sama's books like 2 others I know. But other than that, you tried your best, and that's what matters in the end. He sniffed. I must have just been nervous. He was barely able to shape his chakra during the test. He even placed in the top 3 of the throwing exam and the top 8 of the sparring matches, demonstrating how much his physical abilities had improved. Naturally, the knowledge test was a total bust, but the worst. It's all right, Naruto. His body switch was shaky at best, and he hardly finished the henge. But when he first arrived, his clones appeared lifeless, and he was unable to do anything correctly no matter how hard he tried to clear his head. He pleaded with the woman, "Please, Nan-chan." Naruto. She attempted to caution him about. "Don't give up on me." She muttered, "Give up on you. Don. Don't stop your training, please. I know you didn't want me taking the exam, but..." He was still crying when she pulled him into an embrace and said, "Shut up, brat. A stop in the road doesn't mean the journey's end. It just means you need to keep going, further into the beyond." "Nan-chan," Sasuke said, "I'll be here too, Naruto. Next time we could even try together." Nanashi gave the boy a look that Naruto missed, but he allowed his tears to slowly fade. Nanashi stopped that night as she was putting the boy in the guest bed and carefully removed what appeared to be a sticker from the back of his neck. It was tiny, but when she held it up to the light, she could see the tiny swirling design of seals on it. The edges were clearly oversaturated because they were burned and browned. The paper would most likely just burn out overnight if left on, eliminating the evidence. Given her current standing in the village, it would be impossible to determine who gave it to the boy or why, but she still pocketed the paper. "Don't worry, brat. Next year you'll make it, I promise that." "Faster." With a grunt, Naruto moved and kicked Sasuke in the arm, but the boy parried. He bent his leg at the knee, twisted on his ankle, and kicked repeatedly. Strong fist. The blonde twisted after pulling his left leg back and planting it on the ground. With a loud crash, the bottom of his right foot struck Sasuke's crossed arm. However, the boy only retreated a few inches. Gentle. As Sasuke attempted to close the distance between them, Naruto fell into the practiced stance and struck out. The other boy received a palm strike to the chest and two-finger jabs to the underside of his arm. "Drop your weights." The impact of Sasuke's forward flight caused Naruto to grimace. Naruto grunted, "Tem." In an instant, the boy with the black hair was gone. After spinning, Naruto used the interceptor fist to slam his fist into Sasuke. They matched each other, whether it was an up, down, or side kick. However, Sasuke had only recently begun learning the intermediate style, while Naruto was still using the beginners. A backhand slid past his nose, and he was unable to match the boy hit for hit. Free. As a diversion, Naruto backed up and swung wildly before spinning and kicking some sand into the air. Naruto attempted to box the other boy's ears, but it was only partially successful. The other boy flinched. Naruto grimaced as Sasuke countered with a snap of his head. This was going to be a loss for him. Once more. As Sasuke repeatedly hammered into him, he twisted, alternating between the interceptor fist and the gentle fist in an attempt to find openings. He was only able to deliver glancing blows. "Stop." Naruto grimaced as his body started to numb itself, gradually healing the bruises and torn muscles, after hitting the ground and narrowly avoiding a kick from the other boy. He looked up at Nanashi, who was swinging in the breeze while lying in a hammock with her eyes closed. Not bad. A bottle of sake was delicately held between two fingers, as usual. "Bo." Naruto averted his gaze, grimacing once more, and slowly stood up. She appeared almost joyful and calm. Sasuke muttered, "Good fight," and extended his hand to his friend. With a nod, the blonde took hold of the hand and stood up. "Yeah, you still won, though," she exclaimed, "technically, a tie." And Naruto couldn't help but laugh and snort. "You weren't even watching," he said. Trying to wash away the sand, Sasuke used the opportunity to splash some water into his eyes and remarked, "You're getting better with your taijutsu." He winced. Even though he was technically ranking second in his class, he was still having problems. "Early graduation is only a month away. I'm sure this time you'll get it this time. It has been 11 months since his first attempt. He will have another chance in another month." "A month. No offense to Sasuke, kid, but you'll pass this time." "No way you won't." "How is that offensive to me?" The woman took a long swig and shrugged, saying, Naruto asked the other boy, "Lunch?" "Let me guess. Ramen again." From her hammock, Nanashi shouted, "Bring me back a salted pork miso. Extra salt," and waved. "Do you think the alcohol will get her first, or the salt?" After giving him an odd glance, Sasuke and he finally nodded at each other. "Both." The woman yelled something as the two laughed, but they had already left the area. "I want a tomato curry for dinner tonight." With a smile, Naruto said, "I bet Nanashi would make it for you." His nose wrinkled up. "She adds sake, but doesn't cook it long enough. She'd add sake to anything if she could. At least she's improved." Sasuke grimaced as he acknowledged. Yeah, Naruto had only previously seen the woman in disarray a few times. However, according to Sasuke, it used to happen every day. The frequency with which the boy would return home to find her unconscious in the living room, kitchen, or even the house itself. Naruto knew it was for Sasuke's personal gain, but they still discussed and joked about it. The boy made an effort to ignore the past. After all, she was the boy's only family. Except for Itachi. The woman had told him about the clan being massacred by her young cousin. The Uchiha heir had massacred his entire clan at the age of 14. At the time, Nanashi was lucky to be incarcerated, living a terrible life while everyone else turned around. Hey, she said if I passed she'd teach me some ninjutsu finally. At least you finally started water walking. You suck at chakra control, Dobi. Finally, after 10 months, I managed to run back and forth for 2 hours while upside down on the tree. All Sasuke had to do was go up and down for an hour. He knew she was referring to the elderly man when she said, "Your old man would kill me if I let you drown by not preparing you, brat." However, there was always something in her eyes that made him question that. But he was never inclined to ask that question. That awful, awful question. Did you know my parents? Every time, the woman slipped. One remark here, one there. Mostly when she was intoxicated. His eyes, his hair, and his serious demeanor. Even so, he didn't inquire. He was happy with his family for the time being. His brother, his Gigi, and Nanashi. To him, she was whatever. Naruto. He abruptly stood up and gave the 2 new members of their small team a blink. Yo, Choji, Shika. Troublesome blondes. He was nudged by Sasuke, who said, they wanted to know if they can join us. Shikamaru whispered, always spacing out. Oh, yeah, the more the merrier. Talking about everything they encountered, the small group kept moving through the village until the 4 finally reached their destination. Yo, Tsuki Gigi. Ah, Naruto. The usual, please, and an order to go. You betcha. Oh, and whatever these 2 want. Sasuke's paying. Since when? Blanche the Uchiha, since you invited me. While muttering a complaint, Sasuke began searching his pockets for his wallet. Fine, but just this once, and you all owe me. Thanks a bunch, Tem. Sasuke gestured to Choji and Naruto, saying, 3 bowls max for these 2. The 2 exclaimed, but that's only a snack. And then exchanged sheepish smiles. Is there room for one more? The 3rd Hokage himself entered after the curtains behind them were drawn. While Sasuke's eyes narrowed and everyone else bowed, Naruto enthusiastically greeted the man. Gigi. He waved the others up, saying, Naruto, my boy, and grinned slightly at each of them. Ah, and if it isn't 2 of my old friend's children. Shikamaru, Choji, how are you 2? And your fathers as well. I haven't had a chance to speak to them outside of working matters with Shikaku. With only a slight stutter, Choji said, Father is fine, Hokage Dono. That is fantastic to hear, Choji. Naruto had never heard the slothful boy speak in such a tone. Father and the rest of our family are doing quite well, Hokage Dono. It is an honor that you ask of us. Choji leapt in and said, Ah, yes, an honor. They are such good men. I am glad to see that their children are rising to their level. Thank you, my lord. With a smile on his face, he turned to face Sasuke. And you, Sasuke, how are you? Are your studies going well? Sasuke muttered, They are, Hokage-sama. The man looked away, now focusing on Tsuki and Ayame. He opened his mouth. The remark was scathing. Nanashi is doing fine as well. Naruto was even perplexed by that. The statement was brief, but based on Sasuke's frown, it seemed to strike a chord. Ah, yes. I am glad. Is her health any better? One that also struck Naruto. As the blonde exclaimed, she's doing great, Gigi. She's taking a nap right now while we go get some lunch. Our training's been coming along great thanks to her. Good, good. For some strange reason, Naruto felt his stomach turn when he saw a glint in the old man's eye. Leaning toward the elderly man, an Anbu entered the ramen stand and whispered something that Naruto was unable to understand. Well, my friends, I am sorry to say, but it seems I cannot, in fact, join you all for lunch today. There's a minor emergency that must steal my immediate notice. I am afraid to say our meeting must end. Tsuki, my old friend, and Ayame, thank you for your short hospitality. It is our pleasure to serve, Lord Third. Oh, and please, send the bill to me. I will, of course, pay Naruto and his friends. Sasuke said, I'm paying. Please, I insist. Before Sasuke could respond, the man had left, and the boy slithered down into his seat, frowning angrily. Naruto whispered, hey, what's the deal? He hissed. The boy bit his lip. Nothing. Don't worry about it. That definitely wasn't nothing, Sasuke. The boy looked at Shikamaru and Choji, who were sitting awkwardly next to them. I'll tell you later, maybe. Alright. After a brief period of tension, Shikamaru asked a straightforward question to finally break the silence in the store. So, Nanashi is your aunt, right, Sasuke? Sasuke grunted, cousin, my father's brother's daughter. Right, and she's been training you in Naruto, huh? Is that why you've gotten so strong recently? The two had never talked to anyone at the academy about that. Technically, training someone within your own clan was forbidden and against a minor law. For Naruto, Nanashi was somewhat able to get around it, but only because she wasn't retired or on active duty. After being stripped of her status, she returned to the village and declined the offer of reinstatement. She was just a civilian because her record had been semi-cleaned. Even if she was now the leader of a shinobi clan, the three had decided to try to keep the training under wraps because there were too many obstacles to overcome. Yeah, Nan-chan's great, she's taught me all sorts of things. Though it's mostly just been some scrolls on taijutsu. Choji acknowledged, you've really climbed the ranks. I don't think I've won a spar against you in the last several months. I'm surprised you've been doing so good on the written tests. Naruto scowled. It was an exaggeration to do good. He was barely making it through the exams. Typically just a few points. Despite Nanashi's persistent efforts to encourage him to study more, it was incredibly dull. I'm just glad to be passing. Are you going to take the early graduation exams again? When the food finally arrived, Naruto smiled at the boys and said, already signed up. My chakra control has never been better. And I can use the clone jutsu easy as pie now. Sasuke continued, he still can't beat me in a taijutsu spar. After finishing his first bowl, Naruto gave the boy a gentle shoulder check and said, give me a couple more weeks, and I'll start taking you down. Just look at how close I got today. The only close part was before I took my weights off. Choji exclaimed, you're using weights already. Nanashi has me using them. Aren't they dangerous? Sasuke gave a shrug, she's teaching me how to use them properly. When to lower them, when to keep them at max weight, and more. Naruto put down his third empty bowl and laughed, saying, Nan-chan always makes sure we're training safely. Ever since Sasuke fell and broke my hand. Him falling broke your hand. Shut up, Dobi. As the boys ate their meal slowly, Naruto denied the story and many others. For Sasuke, it was good to have company other than Naruto and Nanashi for once, and for Naruto, it was good to finally have people who were interested in what he was saying aside from Nan-chan and Sasuke. Regarding the third member of the small family, Nanashi was currently occupied with her own guests. Plus, fuck off. Nanashi waved her sake bottle menacingly at the three Anbu who were gathered around her hammock. Lord Danzo, can suck my silence, she muttered, fuck you too. One of the men advanced, but his ally halted him. She insulted our lord. The man said, peace. Nanashi pretended to be drunk as she stared at the man, trying to catch a glimpse of his eyes or hair. Our lord wishes to meet with you, Lady Uchiha. Lady, Nanashi asked, looking around. I don't see some refined hag around here. Do you? Lord Danzo has a proposition for you. I don't go for old, creepy men. You should hold your tongue, Lady Uchiha. The youngest looked off in his body language, and she winked at the group, almost laughing, saying, you can hold it, cutie. It's always fun messing with these drones. He has an offer for you. A quite serious one. She tipped her bottle over and watched as a final drop slipped out, saying, how exciting. Ah, I'm out. A gift, then. A bottle with an upscale appearance emerged. The cork has a golden embroidery, a complex design, and is completely sealed, above the top shelf. Undoubtedly loaded with drugs, poison, or an aphrodisiac. She had framed numerous individuals with wartime personnel. She held out her hand for the bottle and popped the cork right away. Wait, I used that same brand on a Miss Jonin, that I got from a blank Anbu. Never did put two and two together. Before taking a swig, she concealed a hand behind her back and performed a body purification jutsu to make sure there was no odd odor. There it was, a drug that both stimulated her and was gradually attempting to numb her body. She was unable to consume it. How unfortunate. Thanks for the cheap swill. What's his offer? Before it became clear that their gift wasn't working for them, the three stood motionless for a while. At last, he wishes for you to join his voting bloc. That would have been the purpose of the blackmail. The man had been trying for months, but she usually ignored him when he asked, "And what do I get out of it?" I guess he's gotten tired of waiting. He wishes to give information. I have all the information he could ever give me. At least, any I could care about. The sound of the bastard's gears turning was almost audible to her. The man could really offer her only a few things that she would find interesting. 2A rank taijutsu techniques, and a style from the land of lightning not used since the Warring Clan era. They come from an extinct clan known as the Mizuhoko Sha. Shattering Fist was the first technique, Ocean of Stars was the second, and their taijutsu style was known as the Stepping Stones, Nanashi said with an innocent smile. Before the leader's teeth clacked shut, she heard his lips open. The final charge to destroy the last of that clan was led by Fugaku Uchiha, not my uncle but Madara Uchiha's grandfather. They took every scroll and person they could. The techniques were hard to use and required almost perfect chakra control, but they had a lot of power. As their name implied, they lived in the land of lightning, but they were originally from what would eventually become the land of waves, which was a part of the mist prior to World War II. With strict chakra control, Shattering Fist would be used to remove water from a person's skin, ultimately causing dehydration. In contrast, Ocean of Stars was more of a genjutsu that required rain or a pool of water to be fully utilized. It was intended to be used in conjunction with Shattering Fist, and the user would bend the light bouncing between the water droplets around themselves like a mirage. She had diverted her attention by considering the method. What were we talking about? She asked. Oh right, also, that's not really information, is it? The truth of the massacre. With a sparkle of laughter in her eye, she snorted. Which one? I was a part of several, remember? At last, the man's frustrated grunt came through. You know which one. The Uchiha massacre. He will tell you everything he knows. She speculated. What, that it wasn't Itachi's idea? A harmless, uncomplicated guess. Hook, line, and sinker. You knew already. Of course I knew. What kind of idiot wouldn't know? I also know of Danzo's hand in it. Still won't get me to follow him. I see. After a few minutes of silence, the leader finally turned. We shall leave for the time being. But please, do give the meeting your thoughts. I believe Lord Danzo and yourself could have much to discuss. Come back with something better than this swill. She hurled the laced sake with intense passion, watching as it splattered and broke against the feet of the root nin. They vanished in a flash. Bastards. She swayed in her hammock and was once again met with silence. On the inside, though, she was prepared for anything. Though prepared, I hoped they wouldn't return. Nanashi detested her clan below all else. So Danzo did have something to do with the clan's death. For the most part, it was the name. Fugaku, the elders, and possibly some other blowhards would have been killed by her. But the whole clan, many of the half-blooded Uchiha weren't all that horrible, and the children didn't deserve such a fate. Itachi. Why you? The boy had been so lively and intelligent in those days. Despite his constant pursuit of Shisui, he showed her kindness. Then, while attempting to teach him a technique, she had shown him up. Then, regardless of the reason, you're just a rat like your father. Even so, he had murdered every child. The man had spilled innocent people's blood, for better or worse. Nanashi wouldn't let him go for that if they ever met. But it was not likely. Like she was never going to leave the village. Who would voluntarily leave you endless cash and an endless supply of alcohol? Sweet, sweet alcohol. Wind style. Great breakthrough. Of course, the word, great, wasn't quite accurate. Only a few leaves were blown away as the wind slammed into the edge of a forest, dancing around the training area. As Naruto and Sasuke started arguing again over whose element was superior, Nanashi sighed. She had, accidentally, dropped a scroll 4 months prior that contained very detailed instructions for learning 3-wind jutsu, beginning with an E rank that helped to clear smoke and purify the air in a small area surrounding the user. Finally, a combination of the last two that increased the stakes, followed by a D rank that spit out a stream of wind from the user's mouth that was essentially only useful for distractions. An entire platoon could be destroyed by a well-timed great breakthrough, even though it was only a C rank. Additionally, when used in conjunction with shadow clones, it was an excellent ambush and trapping technique. With the help of a few clones, she had once effectively cancelled the lightning jutsu of an entire platoon against Kumo. Naturally, Kumo enjoyed graduating kids early in an effort to fill their ranks. It wasn't. Entire platoons of terrified young genin were not unusual. Similar to how Naruto would be. The two boys were still not being taught by Nanashi. Merely yelling arbitrary phrases while drinking close by. Nothing more. That was her justification, at least. Naruto was nevertheless making amazing strides. She had heard stories about the boy, and he was moving far more quickly than she had anticipated. However, the boy's growth skyrocketed after they taught him the fundamentals, fixed his holes, and got him on water walking. He went from dead last to second in their year. Nanashi knew the brat would pass this time, even with a disruption seal on him like the previous time, because early graduation was only 1 day away. As a precaution, Nanashi went through her old war kits and discovered a special seal for people going on assassinations or entering enemy territory, a seal to prevent the application of seals. The seal would not activate even if they were drawn on. The boy would receive it from her first thing in the morning. With a slur, Nanashi said, "Good job, brat." As the two brats approached, she got up from where she was standing and almost fell. "Did you see, Nan-chan? I did it." "Yeah," she muttered. The boy would be clearing forests in a few more months. All she could hope was that he would hold on to his childhood for a bit longer. You were haunted by witnessing a body being ripped to pieces using such a method. Years later, all right, you two. I've got a test for you. She was still concerned about Naruto's innocence in the face of his increasing strength. Naruto let out an audible groan, and Sasuke turned away with a grunt. "Come on, Nanashi, I've got too much to do already tomorrow." The Dobes got a point. "It's getting late, shut it, Tem. Now, this'll be a fun little test." Despite her internal conflict, she smiled at the two. She desired to engage in combat with Naruto in order to demonstrate to him the distinction between an academy student and a jonin, including a retired, dishonored wreck like herself. Perhaps he would change his mind if she beat him severely enough. Perhaps. She didn't want to leave Sasuke out, though. She was already compelled to assist the brat with increasingly risky methods, and the boy's ego was already brittle enough. She had only stolen a few high-end lightning jutsu, so it was fortunate that she didn't know many basic ones. "Well, maybe there is some truth about my theft. Ma, they're just crazy." Sasuke arched a brow at her, and Naruto blinked. "Don't worry about it. Now then, here's what I want the two of you to do." She was forced to acknowledge it. Naruto might be beaten. At the moment, he was buried face down in the earth, his legs kicking everywhere as he struggled to break free. Meanwhile, after attempting to trap her, Sasuke was hanging from a tree using his own ninja wire. But he and Sasuke still desired more after removing the blonde brat. Back then, they would have been excellent soldiers. She pondered whether Minato would have sent them to war in their current form. He would have, of course, since he had graduated early and killed a lot of people. She had never met a more deadly yet compassionate man than Minato. Fucking Kushina had even been the subject of his most recent letter to her. Why was she required to purchase the goods? He could graduate with the words, "Fine, Naruto. I'll give you my blessing." In contrast, Sasuke gave him the stink eye, which he reciprocated. "Just think, brat, he'll have some crappy jonin teaching him while you get me AAAAALL to yourself for the next year." He was very disappointed, and she nearly trembled. Nearly. Nevertheless, she sealed a tag the following morning, hung it around his neck while he ate, and watched as the two boys dashed to the academy. She had free time now, which meant she could drink. She took a few bottles in a storage scroll, palmed one, and left the complex, walking into the closest forest after making a quick right outside the gate. Should have gone left. After almost 30 minutes, she eventually came upon an operational training ground. Naturally, it had to be her longtime friend. Uchiha-san. Maeda Guy stood close by, surveying the area with his hands on his hips. With a frown on her face, she turned back to the man and muttered, "Fuck. Guy, how are you?" "It's 8:30 in the morning." She took a swig of her drink and said, "And what was the significance of the time?" The man just sighed and averted his gaze. However, she leaned forward and fixed her gaze on the man. When they graduated together, she was 3 years younger than him. He was 13 when he eventually passed, having failed at the age of 12. When she returned, she was shocked to learn that the man was regarded as the village's best ordinary jonin. Naturally, ordinary did not include all of the natural oddities like Hitaki or Itachi. Guy was only a supporter of diligence. And for that, he was adored by the populace. But she could understand why. Now, the green beast of Konoha was a topic of conversation. Everyone wanted him on a mission, even though he was a pain to go on with. Only one friendly casualty occurred on one of his missions in the last 5 years alone. In addition, he was always eager to assist those in need, whether it was through training or participating in a Chunin's mission with insufficient numbers of participants. Naturally, a lot of people still thought Hitaki was superior. However, that was only as a result of Kakashi accepting the riskier missions. And more generally, if nothing else, she could give the bastard one thing. He was an incredible workhorse, as she had been. She whispered, "How's life?" She had once been friends with the man. But he had turned his back on her, as had everyone else. "Fine. And yourself?" "Enjoyable." The answer was surprising, but she wouldn't say it aloud. "Never. Same, I guess." "How have you?" She cut him off, saying, "Checking out the scenery or something. I heard you usually train in the private fields outside the walls." The man gave a startled blink. She bit her lip to keep from scolding the man for using her given name. "Yes, normally. I'm surprised you know, Nanashi." She shrugged and said, "People talk." He was her best friend, not just a friend. The only person with whom she could exchange taijutsu secrets. The only person who was as interested in taijutsu as she was, and the only one who could compete with her. In actuality, he was her closest friend. He also had the comment, "People talk a lot." The bastard probably wanted to say, "You shouldn't drink so much," attempting to manage her, similar to everyone else. They are constantly attempting to dig their nails into her. She almost choked after taking a long swig, but she finished the bottle and threw it on the floor. "You shouldn't litter, Nanashi. She muttered as she moved forward, "Fight me." Nanashi searched for a kunai to use while stuffing her pockets. "Fight you." Guy instantly raised his hands in surrender. "Nanashi, you're drunk, this shamelessness." At the words, she ignored him and leaned down to see something gleaming in the grass. With practiced ease, she wiped an old, partially rusted kunai against her leg after yanking it from the ground with a downward swing. "Nanashi," he exclaimed. As fire nature charka was forced into the now scalding metal, 2 one-handed signs turned the kunai a deep orange. "Come on, Guy. Old time's sake. Bring it on. I've got some issues to sort through." She pressed the kunai against her wrist and forearm while holding it in reverse. "Nanashi?" he asked in a worried tone now. She disregarded the man because she had long since mastered the art of manipulating her chakra, which she described as a liquid that seeped through her pores and coated her skin. Nothing was burning, at least not in a way she didn't like, but the warmth from the now almost white kunai was still there. With her legs spread wide as she shifted her weight around, her left hand concealed behind her back for quick hand signals, and her right arm held in front of her head with the kunai facing out, Nanashi assumed the piercing sparrow stance. She had given the man the beginners and intermediate versions of the interceptor in exchange for the strong fist style years earlier, provided that the man never used it in front of another Uchiha. "Come on, Guy, maybe if you beat me, I might consider giving you the advanced version of the interceptor," she said. That rule was no longer necessary, of course. Nanashi looked at the man from behind the kunai and said, "You're drunk, Nanashi." Guy was the complete opposite of herself and always favored strong, physical positions. She always favored fast, agile stances that could be enhanced by lightning or fire chakra and ninjutsu, like the current one, which typically used a tonfa set. He was urged by her to, come on. She hadn't had a spar in a long time, and getting her ass kicked in a pub while intoxicated didn't count either. She hadn't felt this way in years, but yesterday's fight with the children had awakened something in her. "Come on, you fucking bastard, fight me." At last, the man dropped into his familiar strong fist stance. She questioned whether the man would display anything admirable today, show off what he discovered after parting ways with her. With lightning speed, she whipped the kunai around at his eyes, causing him to block. "Come on," she exclaimed, a ploy. Using her momentum to her advantage, she spun and slid backward by planting her foot squarely in his stomach. She would have thrown him into the tree line back then. "It's too rusty." The man grunted, "Nanashi." He moved forward. There was no hint of discomfort. "Right." She let her chakra flow cease, and the kunai cooled gradually. The weapon burned as she pressed it deeper and deeper into her palm. I'm weak. Nah. Guy interrupted her as she turned around. Uchiha-san. She felt like she was kicking a puppy when she said, shut up, rat. But she had to leave. More to drink was required. She wanted to die because she needed it. After running as quickly as he could through Konoha's streets, Naruto stormed through the Uchiha household's doors. He had succeeded. He had graduated from the academy a year ahead of schedule at the age of 11. The graduates had been released a few hours early, so Sasuke remained at the school. He yelled into the house, but nobody responded. He took a closer look at the house and wrinkled his nose. Broken furniture was scattered across the floor. The place smelled of alcohol and something rancid, and there were holes in the walls. Some cabinets even dangled from the wall. The boy took a big swallow. Nanashi. He heard something farther down, and he carefully withdrew a kunai while gripping the metal firmly. Naruto crept along the corridor until he reached Nanashi's room, where he could hear a lot of moaning. He bit his lip and opened the door. Nanashi? She asked, half-clothed and with a hand covering her eyes as she lay on her bed. She moaned and was red in the face and drenched in sweat. Nanashi. Immediately placing a hand on her forehead, Naruto ran to her and then jerked back, almost singeing himself from the heat. He hurried to the bathroom down the hall, opened the mirror, and took out several medications. He then hurried back to the woman and immediately got to work trying to get her to swallow the medication. It took some time, and he made several trips to the kitchen to get a bag of ice, water, and a little chicken broth. She finally stopped thrashing so much after about 4 hours, and eventually she was snoring in bed. Naruto. The blonde snapped to attention as Sasuke entered the room. Hey, Tem. What's going on? The boy exclaimed in a panic, and Naruto grimaced at what must be going through his friend's mind. She's sick. Was very bad. She looks half-decent. Naruto gave a nod. Definitely better. The only sound between them was Nanashi's snoring. Finally, Sasuke said something. Iruka-sensei couldn't help but gush over you after the results came in. Spent half an hour telling everyone what an amazing student you were. Really? Him. Fantastic. Don't let it go to your head. Naruto moistened his mouth. Yeah, team meetings are tomorrow morning. Have you learned who you'll be with yet? Not till tomorrow. Right. Do you want me to stay with the two of you? Sasuke patted the boy on the shoulder and shook his head. No, I need to get the place cleaned up. And you need to be ready for tomorrow. Yeah. Are you absolutely sure you don't want me to stay? The boy pointed around the room at the mostly empty bowls of broth and the medication. I think it's my turn. Right. The Uchiha heir took some time to persuade his friend to leave, as he was genuinely reluctant to do so. But when the blonde eventually left, he turned to the disorganized house and got to work, leaving Nanashi's room open just in case. As her reflection mocked her, Nanashi heaved into the sink, made fun of her. Through her drenched hair, which hung in front of her eyes, she glared back. A voice called out to her from the corridor. Nanashi cursed the demons that haunted her and said, "Get away." Standing before her with a mocking grin and fiery red eyes, she cursed her other self. Just shut up. Nanashi, the wind whispered. I said shut up, she yelled as she swung wildly, shattering the mirror and producing 100 reflections that all laughed at her ineffective attempt to stop them. She quieted herself. One big piece, however, hung on the left, its eyes blazing with laughter. How had she allowed herself to become like this? How could she have gotten so pitiful? With a hateful glare at her own reflections, Nanashi picked up a piece of glass and carefully, slowly, and effortlessly placed a corner under her earlobe, just behind her cheek, and tugged. She dragged the sharp weapon deep to the edge of her lips, her eyes burning with hatred as she dared not look away from her reflection contest. Who's the pathetic one now? She yelled venomously as she snarled and spat at her replica. How far had she fallen? How far down would she go? The warm blood bubbled between Nanashi's fingers as she lifted her left hand and pressed it into the wound. Her palm was glowing softly green, and after a moment she withdrew, revealing a now fleshy line that ran across her face. It would either scar or require a few more treatments. She would have quickly fixed the entire situation 10 years ago. She was not so 10 years ago. She scoffed at the bastard in front of her and the ones lurking in the shadows, calling them pathetic. Itachi, Hiru, Shinato, and Fugaku. Every one of the idiots who had brought her down. However, wasn't the joke on them? I lived, you died. Of the Uchiha, she was the last. The bastards who had abandoned her were to be damned. Now it was her legacy, her name. She refused to allow it to wallow. She would restore the clan's dominance. She would demonstrate to the world that being a Uchiha was more than just a name. Pathetic, she exclaimed, spinning the glass fragment and slamming its tip into the eye of her reflection, shattering it as she whirled around and kicked the door open. She would demonstrate it to them. Sarutobi, Hitaki, and Guy. They had abandoned her and labeled her a criminal. However, she would rise like the phoenix of Eld. She missed the boy standing motionless in the hallway with a toothbrush in his hand, frozen in terror as memories that had been locked away gradually made their way back into his head, as she hurried out of the restroom. Screams and blood memories. Sasuke Uchiha realized that night that perhaps, just possibly, Itachi wasn't just the odd one out but rather his entire clan was standing in front of a chasm. He remembered his family lying beneath his own brother. He just jumped in first, his older brother. Naruto whispered, "I need to think of a strategy," from Nanashi's lap. Now, while the woman drank from her sake bottle, the boy lay face up in the dirt, his head resting on Nanashi's crossed legs. "You already have the location, right? Just make some traps. You'll be fine." Despite her continued illness, the woman had made the decision to accompany the boys to a nearby training ground. However, the main purpose was to allow the workers to repair all of the damaged doors and walls without needless interrogation. Would that be allowed? She gave a shrug. He did say it would be a match, right? Yeah, but, naturally, Nanashi anticipated that he would have an additional genin test. "You're a fully fledged shinobi now, brat. You've got to learn how to set up an ambush eventually. Now's the time to practice." Now that they had stolen the concept from the Sannin and the third Hokage, everyone performed them. Of course, she knew the boy would pass. For him, it would be simple. As he worked on his katas, Sasuke sighed close by and said, "You'd better keep up with your training, Dobi." Naruto simply dismissed the boy with a wave. "I will, though I might take a few days off, that way, you'll have a little bit more time to catch up." Sasuke gave them the stink eye, and the two on the ground laughed. "Seriously though, Nan-chan, are you sure you're feeling better?" She smiled at the boy and said, "A little sake always helps. It's my nirvana." Naruto didn't press the matter further, he just grimaced. "All right, so long as you're sure." Her stomach was turning over itself a million times a minute, to be honest. She had endured worse, though. "You'll be fine, Naruto. I trained you, remember?" Every time his sensei's gaze swept over him, Naruto shuddered, feeling as though he were being treated like. He would demonstrate to the man. With a quick thumbs up, the boy turned to face his other two teammates, two more civilian students. The two smiled back, sheepishly. With a disapproving expression on his face, Naruto said, "Uzumaki. Stop distracting your teammates." He just shrugged it off. "Now then, I'm going to head into the forest behind us. You will have 5 minutes of prep and strategizing, then you can come after me. Your goal will be to take this necklace from around my neck, and you will have 30 minutes. Your time starts." Naruto smiled as the man vanished into a pool of water. Like Nan-chan's clone method, he would need to learn that. A civilian boy named Isamu said, "Anyone have a plan?" "I set up a boatload of traps yesterday," Naruto grinned. There were also many in the field surrounding him, but they required his own chakra to activate in the interim. Flash and smoke bombs detonated throughout the forest. A girl named Fujiko stared at him. "Is that even allowed?" "Sensei never said it wasn't," shrugged Naruto, who looked at the two and grinned broadly. So," the other boy interrupted, casting a somber glance at the floor. "This is my second time doing a test like this, but I can only give some information. Do either of you specialize in anything?" "No, I don't really have anything special about me." "What about you, Naruto?" Fujiko said, blushing, as he kicked at the dirt. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Taijutsu. With a bit of ninjutsu, all wind, though." "What info can you give us, Issa?" The boy blinked and then shook his head, asking, "Issa? Yeah, obviously, our sensei is going to hold back, and on my last attempt, we were told it was secretly a teamwork exercise. It may be the same, or it could be different. But if we all work together, I'm sure we'll stand a better chance of passing." "I like it," exclaimed Naruto. "Are either of you good with shuriken jutsu?" "I'm proficient. I can hit the target most of the time." "Sounds great to me." His enthusiasm was nearly overwhelming. A timer sounded throughout the field, and the three of them exchanged glances. I can stay up close and personal with sensei if you two want to try and keep back out of range. I'd appreciate that backup. While Fujiko was actively wringing her hands together and Isamu appeared anxious, Naruto just sighed and extended his fist. Come on, how about a fist bump, and then we can get this started. A fist bump. He grinned and shook his fist. Isamu met the boy in the middle and said, all right, fine. Fujiko swiftly trailed behind. Let's go show sensei we're worth the time to train. To be honest, Fujiko would have instantly denied any belief in Naruto if you had asked. However, Isamu believes that Naruto's plan has merits and that teamwork is the most important thing nowadays. Naturally, it was amazing to watch the boy slam into the man with force and speed right away. A shuriken struck a tiny tag affixed to a tree to the man's right, and Naruto grinned as their sensei instantly staggered back. When a smoke bomb detonated, Naruto launched a kick and then dropped into the gentle fist style, using the tiniest amount of chakra to target the man's joints. Their sensei was astute and leapt high into the air when the first jab landed with a howl of pain. Got you, Naruto said, flinging a kunai into the air while tying a tag around the grip. As Naruto leapt into the air and kicked the weapon at their sensei, causing it to explode into a flaming mass, the other two genin fell to the ground. He would need to lend Nanashi the money for all of these tags as a gesture of kindness. Slightly singed, the jonin staggered out of the smoke and struck a trip wire right away. You damned brat. Naruto had to shield his eyes as the flash bomb detonated as a light blossomed again. He shifted into the strong fist position and pumped chakra into his arm. Water style. Shrouding mists. Naruto saw the man unfold a scroll, causing several gallons of water to spill out before the mist swiftly covered the area. As their sensei's words reverberated, the blonde smiled. Well done, but you'll need to do better. Naruto used his own jutsu after making sure the other two students were behind him and flashing through a number of hand signals. Wind style. Great breakthrough. The mist dissipated, allowing him to see with satisfaction Akami-sensei's jaw drop. Fujiko seized the chance to launch 2 additional shurikens, both of which went wide. The jonin continued to search for their landing spots in search of another trap, though. Isamu got closer and almost grabbed the man's arm, but a kunai stopped him. That necklace is ours, sensei. Naruto's smile was now practically blinding everyone. You're going down. Nanashi nearly felt sorry for the person opposing Naruto. With the exception of clans that actively employed elemental jutsu, such as the Uchiha, the majority of genin were unaware of any at this stage in their lives. However, his taijutsu was also quite impressive. Behind her, Sasuke whispered, I think the fish is alive. She turned and saw the boy poking a fish that was obviously dead. Throw it on the pile and try again. Pulling out the next one and pressing chakra into his palms, the boy followed instructions while muttering death threats. Nanashi laughed as the boy kept practicing his mystical palm technique, saying, Don't worry, brat, once you learn this technique, no more fish will have to die. Quote. Sucker. She had a clone at the other pile, gutting and descaling the fish for supper. For his achievements, Naruto would receive a lavish feast. There was already another clone at Ichiraku's ordering ramen to go with everything. For the brat, it would be ideal. She did have to get Sasuke a mountain of tomatoes, though. But it was worthwhile. For once, Nanashi truly felt as though she had achieved something for once. Something with significance. Well, that was just too much. She sank deeper into her chair after taking a swig of her sake. That brat needs to be grateful for everything she did for him. Naruto was breathing heavily and had his hands on his knees. Eventually, their sensei had grown weary of the trap-filled forest and led the group out of its boundaries. With Naruto's help, explain right into a baby powder. Fury was written on the man's face, and he was now covered in white dust. However, he was also exhausted and had trouble breathing. With a smile on his face, Naruto stood up straight and inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with chakra as Nan-chan had instructed. Exhaling, he felt his body re-energize a little and turned back to face his sensei. Ready for round 4, sensei, he exclaimed, laughing at the response. The man swore with more venom than Naruto believed he deserved, saying, Damn brat. It would be okay, though. Like his new friends, he would soon be a true genin. The other 2 genin flanked the jonin, and he glanced past the man. Naruto readily gave up his own weapons because they were running low on ammunition, which may have been a mistake based on their sensei's shaky hold on his own kunai. However, Naruto would live. He did it every time. Raising his fists to his face, Naruto hopped on the balls of his feet. Another style, the Jonin asked with a frustrated expression. Naruto leapt forward and twisted his feet as his sensei attempted a quick kick. Push chakra to your feet, let it swell. Remember when you first learned tree walking? Burst forth. The blonde slipped by, avoiding, and struck Akami's hip with a fist. Desperately, the Jonin whirled to catch him. Nevertheless, Naruto continued to move, dancing around the man, slamming hit after hit, switching between his various styles until, at last, Isamu's fortunate kunai and Fujiko's barrage of shuriken diverted the man, enabling Naruto to kick him in the back of the leg and knock him to one knee. Light erupted as Naruto tore one final kunai with a tag from his back pouch and tossed it in front of the man. The genin let the man stagger past him as he threw his hands over his face and reared back. With his arm extended, the blonde boy leapt into the air. It was so close to victory. When Naruto reached out and closed his open palm over the metal dog tags the sensei was wearing, his expression changed to one of ecstasy. So near, nearer. His sensei appeared enraged and smacked Naruto's arm away, shattering at least two of his fingers as he felt the metal tingle against his skin. His sensei grabbed his wrist viciously and flipped him through the air as the blonde gasped and swung his other arm up to try again. The man growled, "Damned brat." Breathless, Naruto slammed his face into the ground. He screamed as a foot made contact with his elbow, snapping his arm in half, and he winced as his unbroken hand was wrenched back. A timer sounded nearby, and Isamu and Fujiko gasped. Grimacing at the other two pupils, the man lowered Naruto deeper into the ground. The man ignored the glares from the genin hopefuls and stalked off, saying, "Get him to the hospital if you want. The three of you failed." As he fought to breathe, Naruto heaved into the ground. At least a few of his ribs were broken, and they hurt. As the pain subsided and the numbness set in, he felt hands snatching him. Still, breathing was really difficult. Thus, extremely difficult, too. Nanashi was furious beyond belief. Naruto wasted an entire day. The brat was still nowhere to be found as the sun began to set. She took a deep sip while clenching her teeth. "You'd better not be hurt. Brat." At last, fed up, Nanashi walked slowly through the deserted Uchiha district and, with a fiery gaze, pushed open the gate. All she needed to do was recall which training ground he visited. Or perhaps they had gone to dinner with their sensei. Questions, questions. All she had to do was leave a clone with Sasuke in case the boy returned, and she would at least be able to follow his trail at the training grounds. Since when did I become the responsible one? Miss, who was calling out now? Nanashi looked back and saw a young girl run toward her, puffing and huffing all the way. "If you're looking for Sasuke, he's not here right now." "Damned fangirls," she said, rolling her eyes. "No," the girl said, trying to inhale, but she ended up coughing. Nanashi slowly leaned over and gave the girl a back pat while looking up at the sky and praying to anyone. "Come on, kid, get it out. It's Naruto. He's your son, right? You're Nanashi Uchiha." She couldn't resist yelling, "Son. Since when?" The girl stood up at last, her breathing evened out. Well, you're his guardian, at least." She muttered, "Accidental teacher, not teacher. What about the brat?" The girl's eyes were fixed on the ground as she wrung her hands together. "What about the brat?" Eventually, after more wringing of the hands, "He's in the hospital." Her good buzz vanished. "Tell me everything." Nanashi glared at everyone who looked at her as she stormed through the hospital doors. A gust of wind caused her clone to materialize next to her, holding Sasuke. She asked Fujiko, "The girl, which room is he in?" 107. Nanashi scowled. As the child wrung her hands and stared at the floor, she said, "I thought you said he was seriously injured. They'd have him on the second floor in ICU." She sighed and said, "Lead the way. Don't we need to check in?" She merely gestured for the clone to proceed and led Fujiko down the hallway on the other side. "Nothing a clone and liberal use of genjutsu won't fix." She mumbled, "Isn't that illegal?" "Semantics," mumbled Nanashi. As they approached the room, they noticed a boy sitting on a bench outside. "Isamu, Fuji." The girl threw her arms around the boy in an embrace as she skipped toward him. As Sasuke followed, Nanashi approached the two and said, "So, can someone tell me what exactly happened? All you said was that he was injured." The two exchanged glances, and the girl shuffled her feet and wrung her hands together angrily again while the boy turned away. Nanashi bent down to meet the girl's gaze. "Well," she whispered, "Naruto didn't want us to say." Fuji, screamed the boy, shouldn't we tell her what happened? Isn't she a clan leader? Maybe she can say something. This isn't fair in the first place, but what he did to Naruto-san. Who did what to Naruto? Was this not a training accident? Where's your sensei anyhow? Is he in the room? Nanashi was only made angrier by Fujiko's continued hand-wringing. She was shocked when Sasuke interrupted, saying, please. He's like my little brother. Just tell us what happened. They then heard about Naruto's fierce battle with the Jonin. Or at least that's how the two children perceived it. At least until that desperate move, Akami undoubtedly refrained. Nanashi couldn't stop wondering about the name, even though she was getting angrier by the moment. Why did Akami sound so familiar? The doctor's in there now. I'm not sure why they didn't send him to the ICU. He was coughing up blood really bad, and. After stepping past the children, Nanashi pushed her way through the door. The Anbu that had come to greet her was immediately pushed aside by her pushing a palm out. Sasuke darted past her to the only bed that was occupied as she swept into the room. As he lay on his side, Naruto gripped his chest and inhaled deeply through an oxygen mask. Nearby, a doctor was writing on a notepad. I said no visitors for the time being. As the man snarled at her, Nanashi snatched the doctor's notepad and flew through it, saying, as the kid's guardian and a trained med-nin, I think I can come in whenever. Right, quiet down. I'm just trying to figure out what's wrong with the brat and why he isn't in the ICU. The doctor sighed, you know why we didn't send him there. She scowled at the documents and said, oh, enlighten me then. Judging from these injuries, he should be there under constant care. 5 broken ribs, a possible punctured lung, pinky and ring finger shattered, wrist broken, broken arm at the elbow, I mean, come on. This is serious damage, and by a Jonin of all people. He should be guarded as well while that useless bastard is dragged in front of the Hokage. No offense to our Anbu friend here, but I got in here easily enough, didn't I? You are a member of the council, and that means I can just walk in wherever I want. The Anbu said, so, should I remove you? Before heading back to the doctor, she shot the young man a pathetic glance and said, it would be cute if you tried. Now explain why he's not in the ICU. The man rolled his eyes and said, his regeneration, skill. He doesn't need anyone looking over him. He'll be fine by morning. Nanashi yelled, I can see him turning purple from here. I'm not going to waste my chakra on someone who doesn't. Get out then. Excuse me, out. She shoved the man. Nanashi grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to the door, saying, if you touch me again, I will have no choice but to. She considered hurling him out of the room, but decided to just push him out. You. She turned back to the Anbu after slamming the door in his face. You want to stay or leave? Quiet. Nanashi rolled up her sleeves and stalked back to the bed, saying, good. She had already sadly purified the ideal buzz she was experiencing before visiting the hospital, but at least now she would be able to assist the brat. She would simply need to pay him a portion of his initial paychecks, to take her sake's place. Alternatively, she would force him to purchase her a premium bottle. The child was now a genin, damn it. Instead of returning him to the academy, they would most likely shunt him into the reserves. Now watch carefully, Sasuke. This is how you treat a human patient. After discovering that one of the child's ribs had completely punctured a lung, it took a lot longer than she had anticipated. Without the right equipment, she had to extract the bone using just chakra. After bringing her everything she needed, the Anbu came and went, but eventually she was finished. When you're out in the field, Sasuke, you won't always have access to your tools. You need to learn how to do everything with chakra, using it like a scalpel, tweezers, or even stitching someone up. Once you've mastered the mystical palm technique, I'll get you started on the scalpel, which could benefit you greatly, as the chakra scalpel can also be used in battle as well. I've seen med-nin gut enemies before without even slicing through their skin. Now, the only thing to do is wait. The 3 children said, he'll be alright, then. Yeah, Naruto will pull through. Why don't you kids go home or something? I'll speak with the Hokage about the situation tomorrow, though from what you all have told me, maybe you two should go back to the academy for another year. Train more, harder than you ever have before. Try and find what you're good at. Could I learn that? Inquired Fujiko. What? How to be a med-nin? She gave a nod. You'll need near-perfect chakra control. Tell your academy sensei. They'll be able to get you help. What if we can't go back? She said, why wouldn't you? To Isamu. Not everyone can afford to. We civilians get a price reduction, sure, but it's just me and my dad. I'd need to start working this year if I want to go back. Nanashi turned her head away from the child and licked her lips. Don't worry about the money, kid. But they wouldn't, but a donation made in someone's honor would. Don't worry. If you really want to be a shinobi, then the village will take care of it. When the brat truly needed assistance, they provided it. Ryo, what was 100,000? Right. Eventually, Nanashi persuaded the brats to run home, even though the two were reluctant to leave. Now then, Akami, where have I heard that name before? It was nearly 11 o'clock now. Nanashi, however, had located them. As multiple people yelled at her, she stormed up to her target as she slammed into the bar with murder in her eyes and a plan. As Izuki attempted to stage her arrival, she pushed past him and punched the bar counter next to Akami Tengi. Can I help you? Oh, Nanashi, what a pleasant surprise. Nanashi. Guy would undoubtedly be present as well, but she chose to ignore him. She growled, I've got a bone to pick with you, Akami. He chuckled and asked, is that supposed to scare me? Come on then, tell me what I did to piss you off. I don't think I've even seen you much in the last year. Heard after Izuki kicked your ass, you started just drinking at home. So go on. What did I do now? Naruto Uzumaki, the blonde pranking menace. What about him? Nanashi had to use all of her self-control not to punch the man through his shit-eating smile. You put him in the hospital for no reason. You had no right to fail that team. He won. You could have killed him. I don't know what you're talking about. I gave them a test, but they failed. It's not my fault they were so weak. Besides, those other two kids barely did anything. When I signed up for Jonin duty this year, I thought I would at least get a half-decent team. All I got were the rejects. A hand landed on her shoulder from behind as she grabbed his collar. She snarled, shrugging the hand away and pulling the man in close. Shove off, Guy. The man grinned at Guy and said, it's self-defense now, right? Nana, glaring into the man's eyes, she released him. I challenge you. Challenge me, and why would I accept? 5 jutsu from the clan library. Any element, 2 C's, 2 B's, and an A. Even Guy gaped at her like a fish, and the bar went silent. Akami questioned, startled, are you serious? You can even look through the forbidden scrolls. Just don't blow yourself up. Anything. Kenjutsu techniques, Tai, Nin, Gen, I don't care. The man extended a hand and said, deal. Tomorrow, training ground 7. Don't worry, I won't trap it like the brat did. But anything goes. Ken, Nin, Gen, Tai, forbidden. Whatever. Akami let out a loud laugh. You can if you want to. You're going to need it. Wait. Guy intervened at last to separate the two. Nanashi did not add her prize. As the Jonin officiating this match, I cannot allow it to happen until she states what she wants. She scoffed, who says you're officiating? But turned away after a brief glare. Fine, your headband and vest. The room was silent again. You've got a lot of nerve, Uchiha. Then you'd better win, huh? What are the conditions? Until one surrenders audibly. Deal. Guy intervened. I do not believe that is very safe. Perhaps. Akami sneered at her and waved the man away, saying, it's fine. She'll just have to make sure to practice her begging. She snarled back, bastard. She shouted out, turning her back on the man pushing his way through the crowd. Don't forget, training ground 7, noon, on the dot. She heard Guy tell Akami as she was leaving. Are you sure you wish to do this? Nanashi was a great Jonin years ago. She specialized in assassination using taijutsu and genjutsu to disable her targets. And she's been a drunkard for the last 11 years. Don't worry, though, I'll hold back just a bit. Won't cut her pretty face too much with my kenjutsu. She growled, bastard, and fled the structure. The plan's first step was completed. Tomorrow, she would exact her retribution. With a sake bottle tightly gripped in her right hand, Nanashi half stumbled across the training field as noon quickly approached. On one side of the field, there were immediately several shouts of laughter. Izuki, Akami's brother, was shouting in front of a sizable crowd. Look at her, drunk already. She slurred angrily, piss off. Guy was already by her side when she said, Nanashi, it's not too late to back out of this. I don't know what you think you can accomplish here, but... Her eyes were half-lidded as she spoke slowly, he put a kid in the hospital. Guy, I'm gonna put him in there. Not while drunk, you can't. I'm canceling this fight. With a frown, she shoved the man away. Too late, we're both already here. You're not fit, piss off, she yelled, giving her ex-best friend the most angry look she could manage. Akami moved to stand a few feet across from her as the man moved to the side of their makeshift ring, saying, fine. Maybe you'll finally learn something from this. Ready, Uchiha, she grunted. HN. Guy said, this is your last chance to back out, and held up a hand. Speak now, or we will begin. Quiet, however, Akami fidgeted a little and knelt down, gazing at Nanashi, who was standing on Guy's left side by the lake. Not the positioning he would have preferred. He could, however, avoid her and reach the lake. Fine, you will begin in 3, 2, 1, fight. Nanashi slurred, hold on, and gestured with a finger. As the woman raised the bottle to her lips and drank the remainder of its contents, Akami growled, seriously, Uchiha, even shaking the bottle to release the final drop. Fucking alcoholic, are you serious? You're nothing but a failure. Akami, exclaimed Guy. Nanashi muttered, that's better, and moved forward, making a one-handed tiger sign with her single finger. What are you? Fire style. Roaring lion. The alcohol caused a huge plume of fire to shoot out of her mouth. Shit. Akami slammed to the ground as the flames burned through his clothing, searing his back. You crazy bitch. A heel smashed into the spot where his head had been, forcing him to roll to his feet. She yelled, get up and fight, bastard. Without using any slurs or having half-lidded eyes. His soul was pierced by just 2 black beads. With his tanto barely thwarted by her kunai, Akami jumped to his feet. Before he could finish, she kneed him in the stomach, causing him to gasp, my kenjutsu, uck. His nose was cracked by another knee, and he staggered backward. Swiping his tanto across his front, he stopped her advance and fell into his favorite stance. The man gritted his teeth at her smirk and said, oh. A leaf-style stance for sure. Konoha's moon style, perhaps. I'm right, I thought Hayate was the only one. Most prefer Konoha's river or mountain style. A perfect replica of his attack stopped him as he rushed forward. He took a step back and tried a lateral slash, but it was blocked again. He gave it another go. Block. He leapt back and attempted to enclose her, but she repelled him. His mind was beaded heavily by those black eyes. She slashed at it with a kunai as he pushed his hands together and jumped back, silently spitting a ball of water out of his mouth. A diversion. He flipped through some hand signals and produced a smoke bomb. Shadow clone jutsu. 2 clones appeared behind the smoke, shifting positions. Akami gritted his teeth at having to use a technique like this so quickly, and the 3 dropped into their stance. But he had to take care of her right away. The consequences of killing Uchiha, the last adult, are terrible. Playing hide and seek, are we? Sensing her chakra through the smoke, he and the clones hurried forward, exclaiming, leaf style, dance of the crescent moon. Wind style. It didn't matter. They leapt high into the air and burst through the cloud. He heard her yell, great breakthrough, the conclusion of her jutsu, but there was no wind as they descended. His blow struck first, easily severing a hand and penetrating deep into her shoulder before she could even dodge. She let out a painful scream. As he stepped aside, his first clone landed and sliced through her waist. Finally, when his third clone touched down, her head flew. He heard giggling, not what he had anticipated, but then. The world collapsed. He gave a blink. 1, fight. Nanashi slurred, hold on, and gestured with a finger. As the woman raised the bottle to her lips and drank the remainder of its contents, Akami growled, seriously, Uchiha, even shaking the bottle to release the final drop. Fucking alcoholic, are you serious? You're nothing but a failure. Hold on, was it deja vu? But still, he knelt and fire style. Roaring lion. It was definitely a deja vu moment. Just in time, he leapt back and landed close to the lake, flipping through multiple hand signals. Water style. Rising wave. Water rushed forward, slamming the flames out of the way and almost swallowing the terrified woman. He started on this side of the battle for this reason. She staggered to draw a kunai to protect herself, but he ripped his tanto from his back and slashed into the water, saying, water style, blade of water. But he refused to let her. Leaf style. Vanishing blade. He vanished, leaving a long gash in her side as he shunshined past. She might not bleed out in time if she was taken to the hospital right away. Guy would help her get there. Without a doubt. The world collapsed. He gave his nose a scratch. Fight. Nanashi slurred, hold on, and gestured with a finger. As the woman raised the bottle to her lips and drank the remainder of its contents, Akami growled, seriously, Uchiha, even shaking the bottle to release the final drop. Fucking alcoholic. Are you serious? You're nothing but a failure. Hold on. Was it deja vu? But still, he knelt and fire style. Roaring lion. It was definitely a deja vu moment. Mentally chanting the jutsu, he jumped to the left, dove into the lake's water, and swiftly flipped through hand signals. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 2 clones appeared at his side and began flipping through their own hand signals right away. Water style. Crashing deluge. The lake roared forth, and Akami and his clones swiftly followed as the spray obscured everyone's vision. Unaware that his clones were already getting ready to attack through the spray, Nanashi was sprinting through the water. Why was everything so gloomy? Through the water, a hand reached out and seized his clone. His face was splattered with a warm, damp substance that got into his mouth and eyes. He tasted metal. Clone, exclaimed someone. As Nanashi knelt over him, he turned and blinked through the red. At what point did he fall to the ground? For what reason was his clone being held in that manner? She said, any last words? To the clone, Akami laughed. Naturally, the fool believed he was the clone. Clone, exclaimed the clone. Nanashi grabbed the clone by the neck with a kunai and held him above Akami, saying, do something. Why are you just sitting there? Instead. As she tore the kunai across the clone's neck, blood spurted out, soaking him. What the hell are you? She exclaimed. The jutsu unraveled and he choked. As he was torn apart, his skin, muscles, and bones painfully turned into smoke. The dying man's blood filled his mouth, choking him. Why? What had? Akami jerked back as alcohol soaked into his cuts after a bottle crashed into his face. Fuck, he yelled. Nanashi yelled, are you ready or not? Bastard. He glanced around and blinked. Guy's arm was already down, indicating that the fight was about to begin, but, what? He couldn't even recall why he had stopped. But why was he so exhausted? Are you ready or not? I don't have all day. Day. Akami swiftly created his clones after hurling the smoke bomb to remove those beady black eyes. But for some reason, he tensed. There was a problem. What on earth? He had done this before, didn't he? He'd. With Tontos in hand, he and his clones jumped from the bottom of the lake as the water sprayed. Shit, Kai. Nanashi's powerful chakra-infused punch broke his nose as the genjutsu finally subsided. He looked fearfully into those beady eyes and said, took you long enough. He was lying on his back, looking around bewildered and in excruciating pain. His own relatives and friends watched in horror from a distance. Don't look at them, look at me. He looked again into those black eyes. That's better. Don't worry, I'll make it all better. Mom, she remained alive. What's for dinner? I'm making your favorite, some genjutsu, Akami exclaimed, perplexed. From where had that originated? Is Izuki still at the academy, Mom? He is dear. Why do you ask? Genjutsu. You damned idiot. It's a genjutsu. I thought I could hear him. What's a genjutsu? You know what it is, sweetheart. You're a jonin, remember? Remember. Akami's eyes went wide with surprise. Kai. His hand slowly unfurled from its hand sign as a foot slammed into his chest, crushing something. Fell for it again, You're probably thinking, isn't pain supposed to get me out of a genjutsu? He was kicked again in the side and rolled over, throwing up blood. She stomped on his leg, causing him to howl in agony. Normally, that's true, but with a seal and a constant supply of chakra being pumped into you from each of my attacks, well. Surrender, you idiot. Izuki, surrender. Where's, Mom? Surrender, was now being yelled by more people. I spent so much time in that prison, training. I guess I didn't need to. You're all so fucking pathetic. You've been a jonin for what? 2 years. Maybe take a demotion. You're not that good. I put you in what? A dozen genjutsu. You got through the first couple of layers easily, probably subconsciously, but this was just embarrassing. Man, I went through all those kata last night for nothing. This was the easiest battle against a jonin ever. Mom, did you witness that final genjutsu? Mom. Akami rolled onto his stomach and moaned. Pathetic. She had spent hours yesterday, before and after the bar, planning and planning and planning, and yes, this was all she received, a paralyzed man and a good beating from her. Nanashi snorted as the man pleaded for his mother. It was interesting to see what a basic C-rank genjutsu could do at times. All Nanashi could do was sneer at the man as he moaned on the ground, clutching his broken ribs, and she leaned down and grabbed the back of his vest, thinking, he didn't deserve this. The lousy bastard who dared to fail her student, for nothing more than him being a container, a sacrifice, one that kept a monster at bay, and then had the audacity to flaunt his title. One that he obviously didn't deserve. Nanashi put on the flak jacket, which came off slightly, but the man hissed in pain as it caught his shoulders and tugged at his broken ribs. She hissed back, "Stop whining," and pulled once more forcefully. "Cease." He finally shouted something else. "Aye, sir." She prevented him from speaking by slamming a foot beneath the vest into his back. Nanashi. They were all fucking filth. Was that guy yelling at her? Who gave a damn? I would receive his Jonin vest as part of the agreement. And she'd get what she deserved, she yelled at them. She tugged once more, and this time it became lodged on his shoulders. In theory, he hadn't given up yet. He had attempted, but she snapped out a kick, breaking his arm at the elbow. His agonized screams were almost satisfying. "Uchiha, that's enough." Even as the group started to approach them, she chose to ignore Guy, but it was okay. She got what she wanted, and the vest eventually came off easily. "Now, Uchiha, anything more to demonstrate? You've heard a..." Nanashi muttered, "Shove off, Izuki," and reached down to untie his headband, yanking it off with a flourish after turning the vest upside down and emptying its contents. "What are you?" With a silent incantation and two hand signals, Nanashi hurled the band and vest into the air behind everyone, unleashing a torrent of flames that sent everyone reeling back and quickly reduced it to ash. She yelled at Akami, "Coward. Picking on kids. Being a Jonin is not something you deserve." He sobbed, I surrender." See. Nanashi put her hands in her pockets, turned away from the others, and started to leave. "Now the match is over." "You heard him earlier," interrogated Izuki. She didn't deign to respond to the Jonin, just shrugged. She gave a backward wave. "Have fun here. I've got a meeting with the old fart to get to. You won't get away with this, Uchiha." She lowered her shoulders and said, "What a letdown." In fact, she was relishing the challenge. However, it might have been her own fault. A green Jonin shouldn't have given her any expectations. A green peacetime one, in particular. Most likely, he had never even interacted with a genjutsu expert before. Even during the war, they were extremely uncommon. And once they were discovered, the majority were killed. She rolled her eyes as a shadow fell at her side. "I'm on my way now. I will escort you." A hand encircled her arm and she eventually gave up, saying, "Not needed." "Fine. Just be gentle." They vanished into thin air. It was definitely not enjoyable to be dumped on her rear right outside the old man's door. Particularly since there were multiple people standing there with cautious faces set in stone and the doors were wide open. She brushed herself off as the Anbu entered, then slowly got up and grabbed another Anbu by the cloak, wiping Akami's blood off while grinning at the man. No, that was unmistakably a woman. "I bet I could guess who you are." According to Hirsuin Sarutobi, "Please do not." It appeared as though the end was near. Eventually, Nanashi turned completely into the room and entered through the door. "Hokage-sama," she uttered with clenched teeth. At her side, an Anbu materialized, giving her a severe elbow and almost hitting her head on the ground. "Show some respect, worm." The hand remained firmly in place as she attempted to get away from the forced bow. Now, she wanted to fight this person. "That's all right, dragon." "Perhaps not." The Anbu leader was presented with a dragon mask. "Always. Stand, Nanashi Uchiha, and speak your case." "My case?" she asked, looking around the space. The Ino Shikacho and several other elite Jonin, including Hitaki, were among the few council members present. "Why did you issue such a challenge? Why did you dare to potentially cripple or kill another member of this village?" She was shocked and said, "Why? Are you serious? You're telling me you don't know why?" Dragon's voice echoed through the room, "Answer the Hokage." She just reached into her kunai pouch and grinned. Everyone was alert at once. She took out a piece of paper slowly and held it out. Hitaki was the first to swipe it, turn it over, and freeze. "How do y'all like that, Hitaki? Beat you to it, didn't I?" "How? What is it?" inquired the Hokage. "An official adoption paper for one Naruto Uzumaki." There were whispers. Silence. The man said, taking the paper that Hitaki had offered and examining it. This cannot be binding. I would have heard about it. Only if someone actually told you about it. I tell you, it took a lot of planning to get away with this. But it's dated 3 days ago, Sue. Nanashi sighed. Although it was only completed last night, if they looked around, they would find that all copies were 3 days old, and the woman in charge would have told them the same thing. To trick the woman into believing it was a different day, a straightforward genjutsu and bribe were used. The paperwork was binding, but the woman would be fired and a small fine would be paid. Intel. I am voiding this, effective immediately. By your wisdom, Lord Third. She bowed to the man while attempting, but failing, to conceal her predatory smile. But, this does fall within my reasonings for today's actions. As a reward for Naruto becoming a genin, I had intended to tell him, but I had to settle this after learning that his own jonin instructor had admitted him to the hospital. As you are aware, as long as another jonin is in charge of the battle, a jonin or clan leader may issue challenges. The rest is history. After Metagai offered to help. My son and a future were both harmed by Jonin Akami, weapon of this village. She was frightened, to be honest, but she was prepared to die now, and she felt a chill run down her spine as the old man's chakra filled the room. Kakashi practically snarled at her, reminding her of his summons, saying, "He's not your son, and you know it. Now, Kakashi-kun, now." She winked and put a finger to her lips, saying, "That's an S-ranked secret. As is what you just revealed." "Whatever do you mean, sir?" Nanashi asked, blinking and putting her hands behind her back. "Is it some great secret that we shinobi are all just tools that the village can use however it pleases? Are you not allowed to use and discard us as you see fit? You are not merely weapons, Nanashi Uchiha." The man looked at her. "And I would never throw away a member of this village like you say. Did you not harm me in this way? I broke down in the middle of a battlefield, and you threw me away. After my family called me a thief, you took me away. Just because you were concerned that I might reveal any secrets, you sent me to the worst prison in the world. I could have been in any number of prisons. However, you condemned me to death in blood prison. Are you even aware of the experiences I had? How could I have survived in that hellhole without doing those things? Have you read the reports yet? You wanted me to produce Uchihas for this village, which is why I was brought back. I brought you back. Don't tell me lies." She snapped and stepped forward, ignoring the arms that grabbed her or the weapons pressing into her neck. "You threw me away. I have always done everything for this village. When you sent me away, I was 14 years old. 14. For you and our people, I sacrificed hundreds of lives. I did what I did today for that reason. The only reason Akami Tengi hurt a genin was because of who he was. He led a perfectly good team down for no apparent reason. To get rid of a child he didn't like, he threw all 3 away. Now, for whatever reason, both of those genin are trying to leave the academy. You've probably already heard about the donations I made this morning. 10 million ryo will be distributed to underprivileged clan members, civilian students, and children. For this village that clearly doesn't care about them, only so they can attend the academy and ultimately perish in a ditch. Everyone in this village is very important to me. Naruto in particular." She snapped, "Then grow some balls and prove it." Everyone retreated as she fell to her knees, gagging on the carpet. Uchiha Nanashi. Dragon is the only one who stays. I have a lot to say. Before Dragon tore Nanashi to her feet and essentially threw her into a chair, she was breathing heavily into the carpet. She hissed at the Anbu, "Fuck you. This was going to be terrible. Akami Tengi will be in the hospital for no less than 3 weeks, even with our best med nins working on him. It hasn't been that long since he was taken to the hospital. Our shinobi work quick," Dragon said. "Easy to do when we're not all dying out in the field, huh?" Nanashi growled at the man. "The war is over, Nanashi. That is something you need to learn. You had a year of peace before being sent to blood prison. I had 3 months. The Hokage gave her a blink. I was sent to the border, remember? 6 months in frost killing, missing nin, and bandits, then another 2.5 months in grass, where you ordered me to attack a camp with 4 other jonin. 2 of us survived after slaughtering children. I broke down and had to be drugged and dragged back to Konoha. Minato-sama is the only one who defended me, who fought against throwing me in a mental hospital. And now you idolize him so much that you would try to cripple a man simply because his son failed his genin test. Are you serious? Did you not watch the match or something? I heard 2 nearly identical retellings of that match. It's bullshit that you would believe he didn't deserve to pass. Which is why he will be put into the reserves until next year. So that his potential can be squandered. Do not think I don't know what you are doing, Uchiha. As his glare deepened, she leaned back and asked, and what's that? You're dodging the real question, Dragon continued. She started to speak, but Hiruzen spoke before her. Your obsession with Minato Namikaze. Despite her half-lied statement that has nothing to do with wanting to help Naruto, she looked at the Anbu and asked, and why is he here for this? The man snorted. You think I wouldn't know his son? That I wouldn't spend my life making sure my men protected him? When Nanashi finally realized who she was speaking to, she leaned forward and snapped her fingers. Atsushi Hyuga, the bright wind of Konoha. Minato Namikaze's teammate under Jiraiya and the only branch Hyuga to ever lose the cage bird seal. No wonder hearing you talk pissed me off so much. When she was 13, he almost crippled her in an ambush because of false information. The doctors couldn't have saved her spine if she hadn't learned medical ninjutsu. The Hokage said, now you know a third S-ranked secret. Yeah, I heard he was on a long-term mission in the land of Marsh. So why reveal yourself to me, huh? That is a need-to-know information. More chances for me to slip up, I guess. But that's nothing. I know a dozen that could easily send this country into war again. Hito, Watanabe, the land of honey incident. Need I go on? No, Hiruzen said, his aged face wearing a sorrowful expression. So, whether or not I'm obsessed with Minato aside, what I did was for the good of the village. I think you just wanted some blood. Why? Because I'm drenched. Still clinging onto that title. Yeah, it certainly fits still, does it not? Nanashi chuckled. And your legacy continued with Itachi as well. She gave the man a growl. He furrowed his brow. You taught him how to weave layer upon layer of genjutsu, did you not? Even though you never unlocked your Sharingan, you were still a master. Your one true love, no. Taijutsu is my one true love. Genjutsu simply helped me to survive. And so what if I taught Itachi? He turned around and stabbed me in the back anyhow. Ah, yes, he wiped out the clan. I don't give a rat's ass that he slaughtered the clan. Most of them needed to go, I admit that. The children, he should have left alone, but the adults. The council, the elders, Fugaku. No, I mean when he lied to Fugaku after I trapped him in a genjutsu. A lie, she waved him away, saying, nothing that matters now. I believe it does, seeing as how you're teaching Minato's son the same things. Trying to make him into another weapon, as you put it. Nanashi frowned again. She clenched her fists in rage and lowered her head to the ground, saying, I'm not trying to make him into a weapon. He already knows multiple elemental jutsu. I knew dozens by his age. And you were raised as a weapon for war. He needs strength. He needs a childhood. She raised her head abruptly, a smile spreading across her face. He's had a normal one for the last year. Meanwhile, in all the previous years, he has had beer bottles thrown at him and insults slung at him from either side of the street. You can't say he deserves a childhood when you've done nothing but make sure he suffers. That's when Hiruzen stood, his eyes full of rage. I'm warning you, Nanashi Uchiha. She got up to greet him and exclaimed, oh, are you finally going to put me out of my misery? Go ahead, do it. I only live right now to spit on my clan's hopes of coming back. One more slip up, Uchiha. One more. Might as well kill me now. Kill you. Now, why would I do that? You've spoken openly about how much you hate blood prison. Why don't I simply send you back there? Bastard. She gnashed her teeth at the man and was pushed back down by a hand on her shoulder. Calm yourself, Uchiha. Then she spat, bite me. The elderly man said, your hands are trembling. They were, but Nanashi's fists were clenched, her nails digging into her palm. You're sweating as well. Tell me, Nanashi, have you had anything to drink today? She nibbled on her tongue. Any since yesterday evening. She remained silent, though. You're going through alcohol withdrawal, aren't you? Answer him, Uchiha. His expression was grim as he gazed at her. It is fine, dragon. I suppose I will let you leave soon so that you can indulge yourself. As though she were a failure. He wasn't incorrect, but at least Minato wasn't staring at her that way. Tell me first, Nanashi. What is it that I can do for you? She froze at the words. What? You spent your time in prison. Yes, you came back early, but you still did your time. So what is it that I, as the Hokage, can do for you? What will it take for you to stop this self-destruction? Nanashi looked at the man with wide eyes and said, you've spent this entire meeting breaking me down. And you have for myself. Everything that was done was for the good of this village. Yes, some information was wrong or warped, yet because of your sacrifices and the sacrifices of others, we won the war with far fewer deaths than we should have lost. It hurts me to see someone who gave everything they had to this village, who sacrificed so much, to now wallow in the gutters. It hurts. I try to make sure all of our veterans are taken care of, Nanashi, and I had assumed your drinking and wastefulness were simply to get back at me. But for the last several months, I see that instead, it was merely a coping mechanism. Something pricked the corner of her eye, and she said, stop. What can Konoha do for you, Nanashi? I do not care for your last name, I only care for the 8-year-old girl that I sent into war. The office was silent, and Nanashi's hatred grew stronger as she could only glare at the man in front of her. Sasuke trailed Naruto as he made his way up and down the hospital's hallways. Good, 2 more trips, and we'll get back to the room. Naruto complained, then can I leave? Shut up, Dobi, if you need to stay longer, then you'll stay longer, got it? Naruto continued to limp down the hallway while making a face at the boy. The boy smiled at the alleged doctor in training, Kabuto Yakushi, the former adopted son of one of the village's medic corps captains, and said, if you can finish these laps, I think you'll be good to go, Naruto-san. Nay, Kabuto, why did you want to become a doctor? A doctor? No, I'm sorry, I'm afraid that's not what I want. I'm actually a genin and am training to become a fully fledged member of the medic corps like Nono was. Sasuke's training to be one as well. Shut it, Dobi. The older boy grinned at him and asked, truly. That's surprising. I think there's only been 1 or 2 Uchiha in the village's history that become medic nins. Naruto smiled and said, really? So Nan-chan's really 1 in a million. Nan-chan. The boy was elbowed by Sasuke, but the blonde just kept talking. Yeah, Nanashi Uchiha, she's awesome and has been teaching Sasuke everything she knows. Sasuke huffed as the boy's face took on a grimace. Nanashi Uchiha. Why is that name familiar? She's a great teacher. Plus, she's an amazing medical ninja. She had to heal Naruto when the other doctors refused to properly treat him, simply because of his healing bloodline. The boy stopped outside the room and his smile returned. Ah, a bloodline, was it? He asked. That is certainly fascinating. Perhaps sometime you'd be willing to help me with my own work, Naruto-san. You as well, Sasuke-san. Though your help would be more learning medical ninjutsu from myself. I'm sure Nanashi is a fantastic teacher, but a second opinion never hurts. The Uchiha heir scowled and said, It would also give me the experience needed to teach more later down the road. Perhaps when I become a jonin and take on a team. With a thumbs up, Naruto said, that would be awesome. I'm glad you enjoy my dream, Naruto. Now then, why don't we get all the paperwork finished, Naruto was worn out by the time he eventually collapsed onto Sasuke's couch. His chest continued to heave, and his limbs burned. But at least he was home because of Nanashi, or the place he hoped to call home. Muttering, Nanashi isn't back yet, Sasuke said. Ignoring the pain in his chest, Naruto turned over and inquired. Did you speak with her this morning? She said she might be busy in the village all day. Something about a meeting with the Hokage. I think, yes, she mentioned the incident last night with your doctor. Man, I really wish she and the old man would learn to get along. I'm sure if they sat down with each other, they'd learn they have a lot in common. Really? Raised Sasuke's eyebrows. The Hokage and the local drunk. Sasuke raised a hand as Naruto, frowning, opened his mouth. I don't mean anything by it, but it's true. Nanashi, she's a drunk. Nothing more, nothing less. She's getting better, far better, but with an old, frayed band in one hand and an unopened bottle of sake in the other, Nanashi hurried through the front door as it slammed open. Nan-chan, you're back. Her shoulders trembled wildly as she walked into the room. Sasuke saw a big bruise on her cheek and scowled. Nanashi, he inquired. With a question in his mind, Naruto swung out of his chair and stood up. She interrupted herself. With Naruto at his heels, Sasuke approached in concern. They noticed something when they looked at the band she was holding. Is that a headband? It was old. The fabric had numerous deep nicks and cuts, and several strands protruded from the stitching supporting the metal plate. However, the Konoha seal was clearly in the center. Nan-chan, whose headband is that? Inquiring too, Sasuke took the woman by the arm and led her to the couch. He couldn't tell if she was trembling because of the alcohol, the lack of it, or just her nerves. Nanashi, we're here for you. What's wrong? She paused again, then began to speak slowly. The third he. Naruto scowled and asked, what did Gigi do? She glanced down at the headband again and said, he made me a shinobi again. Gave me, he. Then Sasuke said, Nanashi. This is my old band. I'm a shinobi again, a genin. Nanashi Uchiha, I hereby declare you fit for duty once more and grant you the rank of genin. Pray that I do not regret this decision. You will only be allowed D-rank missions for the foreseeable future, including high D ranks that take you to nearby towns and villages. However, you cannot leave the village alone, a second shinobi must go with you of equal or higher rank. Go now from my office, you may begin taking missions at the beginning of the week. As he shoveled gravel across his side of the road, Naruto grimaced. After Nanashi informed them of the horrors of D-rank missions, Sasuke teased him for hours, saying, damned D ranks. Naturally, Nanashi also chuckled until she realized that would be her only option for the upcoming month until she was able to secure a high D-rank mission. It seems that actual genin teams were given priority over reserves like him. But there was one silver lining to the situation. Given that she was training Naruto, Nanashi no longer had to conceal or use deception in the final nearly 3 weeks of her genin status. He was learning a water jutsu in addition to the 2 new wind jutsu he had already mastered, even though learning water was a little more difficult. Nevertheless, he glanced up and saw the woman, who had already finished, strike a pose in his direction from the end of the road. He yelled, come on, and dropped his shovel. You have to do some of the work, at least. She yelled in response. Using earth jutsu to perfectly move the gravel is cheating, and you know it. Naruto grinned at the woman who accompanied him on at least 2 missions every day. He was appreciative of it. In addition to putting some cash in his pockets, he also lost business because no one wanted to collaborate with him, an orphan. He had no idea why he was so despised. It would be okay, though. He would demonstrate his awesomeness to everyone once he truly began performing missions, such as C ranks. If you don't start shoveling now, I'm taking a larger cut of the pay. He said as he got back to work. And I was finally done after spending an hour in the intense heat. The client's grimace was evident despite his best efforts to keep his opinion to himself. It's so. I've got it. Nanashi rolled his eyes. She slammed a foot into the ground and made 4 hand signals. It didn't take long for the rough edges of Naruto's side to align precisely with his own. You could have done that in the beginning, yelled Naruto. And let you get paid for no effort? She asked, simply pointing up at the sky. There's a lesson in this, Naruto. He and the client asked, a lesson. Leaning down conspiratorially, she gestured for Naruto to approach. Yeah, it's called, don't hog my shower all morning, brat. Sasuke did that. Plus, there are several in the main building. She flicked back her chin-length spiky hair and struck a pose, saying, all my soaps and hair products are in there. You think my beautiful hair can shine this good without hard work and time? On missions, you never know when your apprentice can work to your advantage. The client raised his hands in the air and shook his head. Ah, kids these days. Naruto kicked a stray pebble and said, I worked so hard today. Cheer up, brat. If you're nice, I might tell you about our secret mission tomorrow, said Nanashi, snorting and ruffling his hair. Secret mission. Let's get this job turned in, and then we can talk. With a smile on his face, Naruto followed the woman to the Hokage's tower while considering every scenario. Naruto yelled, you never did tell me about that secret mission. During a meal. Come on, Dobi. Finished chewing before you open your mouth. Can it, Tem. Boys, calm down, Nanashi said, rolling her eyes. Despite his complaints, Naruto obeyed and returned to his seat. So what is the mission anyway? A high D rank. Really, it meant they would be allowed to leave the village. The old man wouldn't let me take on with just you quite yet. So we had to improvise. Improvise. Another team is looking to take a mission, so we're going to piggyback on them. Of course, I had to swear a bunch of oaths, promise I wouldn't run away, kidnap you, and a few other things. But we got the mission in the end. Kidnap me, she gestured with her fork. Semantics. But anyhow, we'll be going with Team 9, led by Maida Guy. That green guy, yes, him. Sasuke scowled and raised his voice. The green spandex with the bowl cut. I thought you two hated each other. His was the only team available. Plus, I haven't been out of the village. Technically, I haven't. I guess you could say it's been a little over 11 years. I don't count Blood Prison as leaving, and even on the way over, I was locked in a small box the entire time. So I'll take what I could get. Plus, since apparently we're both flight risks, he wants someone who can put me down. Put you down? She gave a shrug. I doubt Guy would have the balls, anyhow. Naruto scowled at the lady. You don't have to say it like that. Like what? Like the truth. So self-depression. Self-deprecating. Yeah, that. She just gave the boy a smile and carried on eating. Sasuke looked up abruptly and said, wait. Does this mean you'll be wearing the pants in the family while we're gone, Sasuke? Naruto saw that the boy appeared unhappy. Maybe with school being out, you can work on that jutsu you were telling me about. Jutsu? Inquired Nanashi. Sasuke blushed and glanced down at his plate, saying, it's a surprise. I'm still working on it. The boy looked irate until she went on, and she snorted. You remind me of me, you know. I was always striving to learn or create something new. I just want the clan to be proud of me. No one ever cared when I showed off, you know. I'd get punished if I overshadowed certain people. Sasuke sat motionless. But, and this is a big but, I'm not my family, so whatever you're learning, be safe with it. Try to find someone to work with you while we're gone. And most importantly, don't force yourself to be something you're not. I'll be impressed by whatever you do. But, Sasuke, after freezing, the boy slowly reclined in his seat and muttered, fine. Thank you. For the remainder of the night, the three fell into a cozy silence. Nanashi made sure Naruto was aware that he needed to meet her early the following day in order to go shopping. The three eventually went to bed, prepared to move on to the next phase of their adventure. Guy-sensei. Yes, Neji. Their joyful sensei turned and grinned broadly at his Hyuga pupil. Why do we need to make this journey with another team? Why, Neji, isn't it an easy question to answer on your own? Please enlighten us, sensei. Hunched over, the rough boy said. Tenten, his only female student, said, I'm curious, too. Lee echoed his sensei's enthusiasm and exclaimed, Yosh. I think it is a great idea. Building bonds with other teams is essential to being a Leaf Shinobi. Exactly, Lee, Guy said, posing with his pupil. Building bonds with other teams is essential. As ninja, we are required to do a great many varied missions, so knowing your fellow shinobi is crucial to picking out the best teams for a mission. For example, the two we are teaming with today is one made of a taijutsu, genjutsu specialist and a future ninjutsu specialist. Neji sneered and Tenten asked, future? Yes, from what I've heard, Naruto-san has already learned a good few elemental ninjutsu, even though he is a year younger than you all. Naruto, the early graduate. Neji scowled at the ground instead of scoffing this time. Really, we will get to journey with one so talented, exclaimed Lee as he leapt forward. Tenten said, what about the other one? And shouldn't it be a team of 4 like us? The question nearly caused Guy to lose his cheerful demeanor. With a swift smile, he exclaimed, yes. Normally so. However, Naruto-san's teammates were not ready for genin life yet. So he continued on into the reserves. Neji cut in. Doom for failure, then. No one in the reserves ever climbs out. Fate has decreed it so. Not necessarily, Guy attempted. However, Neji was correct. Even if Kakashi was away from the village for an extended period of time, the boy should have at least been apprenticed to someone else. Naruto's training could have been taken over by someone else until the man returned. But Nanashi was at least making an effort. There have been some who have conquered the odds. What about the second person, Guy-sensei? I want to battle this taijutsu expert, exclaimed Lee. Guy practically yelled, no, before pulling himself back in. Nanashi-san will be our second teammate for this journey. Nanashi was a jonin once, but due to an incident. Nanashi Uchiha, Neji stammered, that alcoholic thief. We'll be lucky if she doesn't stab us in the back and become a missing nin. Neji, Guy yelled at the boy. Nanashi Uchiha is still a fellow Leaf Shinobi. You should still show some respect. In response, the Hyuga boy merely scoffed. She's a drunkard who was arrested for stealing another clan's techniques, was she not? What if she tries to steal my clan's gentle fist? Guy was aware that was not possible. In any case, The Uchiha's current leader was likely more familiar with the gentle fist than the majority of the Hyuga. Neji. She appeared out of nowhere and said, "No offense, brat, but I could give your elders pointers on your clan's taijutsu." Nanashi appeared out of nowhere one moment and then appeared in the middle of them with her dazzling smile. Nanashi was a difficult word for Guy to say. Naruto, the woman said, turning away from them and sticking a finger in her ear as Neji yelled something that Guy was unable to hear while his gaze was fixed on the woman in front of him. "Over here, brat." Now Tenten was speaking, and Lee was tugging at his arm. Even as she gazed at him, her eyes, two onyx gems full of laughter, shifted. And there was no hatred simmering there for the first time in a very long time. There wasn't even a hint of alcohol on her. He didn't hear what she was asking him. He muttered to himself, "Damn it. Extremely unyouthful."